The yacht broker thinks I am insane. And honestly, I cannot blame him for that reaction because I am standing in his downtown Seattle office, asking to buy an 80-foot motor yacht with cash. And I probably look like I haven't slept in 3 days, which I haven't. The bags under my eyes are deep enough to pack groceries in. My hands will not stop shaking, and I keep checking my phone every 30 seconds, like I am expecting the world to end, which in a way I am. Mr. Holt, he is saying in that careful voice people use when they think you might be having a breakdown. This is a very significant investment, and perhaps you would like to bring your wife to view the vessel before we discuss terms. I shake my head so hard I feel dizzy, though that might just be the lack of sleep catching up with me. No, I need to buy this today, right now actually, and I have the money. So let's just do the paperwork. I am trying to sound calm and rational, but my voice comes out tight and urgent in a way that probably isn't helping my case for sanity. Gary, that is what his name tag says, Gary Chen, senior yacht broker. He leans back in his leather chair and does that thing where he steeples his fingers like he is a therapist about to deliver some hard truth, sir. The Serenity is listed at $800,000, and that is not the kind of purchase anyone makes on impulse. So perhaps if you could tell me what is driving this sudden interest, we could explore some other options that might be more suitable to your needs. $800,000. My entire life savings. Every penny Linda and I scraped together over 20 years of marriage. Every bonus check I didn't spend. Every promotion I banked instead of celebrated. Every vacation we postponed to build our nest egg. Gone. All of it, into a boat. Linda's going to absolutely murder me when she finds out, though at least she will be alive to do it, which is more than I can say for most people in about a week, if my CDC buddy's classified memo is accurate. 3 days ago, I got a text from Marcus. We went to college together. He ended up at the Centers for Disease Control doing epidemiology work, and the message was just a PDF attachment with no explanation. No context, just the file, and then immediately after he sent delete this after reading. The document was marked classified, had redactions all over it. But what I could read was enough to make my blood run cold. H5N1 avian flu, they were calling it, except it had mutated in ways that shouldn't be possible. Jumped to human transmission with a 70% mortality rate. And the kicker was the incubation period of only 24 hours before symptoms, then another 30 minutes after death before the infected reanimate. The memo used careful bureaucratic language about preparing for worst-case scenarios and contingency planning for social disruption, but what it really meant was that someone at the CDC had done the math and realized we were maybe a week away from complete societal collapse. I really love boats. I tell Gary, which is possibly the least convincing lie I have ever told in my life. And from the way his eyebrows go up, I can tell he is not buying it either. Just, you know, always wanted a yacht. And this one seems perfect. So, let's do the deal. He studies me for another long moment, and I can practically see him trying to decide if I am a genuine buyer with terrible timing, or someone who is about to waste 2 hours of his afternoon. But eventually the commission must win out over his concerns, because he pulls up the contract on his computer and starts typing. All right, Mr. Holt, let's discuss terms then. And I should mention that financing options are available if you would prefer not to pay the full amount upfront. Cash, I interrupt, pulling the certified check from my jacket pocket and sliding it across his desk. I have it right here, $800,000 exactly, so we can close today if you can make that happen. Gary picks up the check like it might bite him, holds it up to the light to verify it is real, and then something in his expression changes from skeptical to professional. Well then, that certainly expedites matters. And yes, if you are prepared to pay cash, we can absolutely finalize the sale today. Though I do need to ask if you have had a marine survey done, because purchasing a vessel of this size without a proper inspection is generally not advisable. I haven't had a survey done because I don't have time for a survey, and honestly at this point I don't care if the yacht is held together with duct tape and prayers as long as it floats and can get my family away from shore when everything goes to hell. I am a marine engineer, I tell him, which is true. So I know what to look for, and I am comfortable waiving the survey contingency. That gets his attention in a different way, because now I am not just some crazy person with too much money and poor impulse control. I am a crazy person who actually knows what he is buying, which somehow makes the whole transaction slightly less insane. A marine engineer. Well, that is excellent. And may I ask what type of engineering you specialize in? Offshore platforms mostly, I say, thinking about my job at Morrison Engineering, where I spend my days designing oil rigs and floating structures. So yes, I know my way around a boat. And I have already looked at the specs for Serenity online, reviewed the maintenance logs, checked the build quality, and she is exactly what I need. What I need is something that can get out of Seattle fast, can sustain my family for months or even years if necessary, has enough space for supplies and possibly taking on other survivors, and most importantly can stay at sea indefinitely. Because, if that memo is right, and Marcus wouldn't have sent it if he wasn't terrified, then land is going to become a death trap real fast. The yacht has dual diesel engines, solar panels, a desalination system for fresh water, and enough cabin space for my family plus a few others. If it comes to that, though, right now I am trying not to think about the conversations I am going to have with Linda and the girls about why we are suddenly abandoning our home to live on a boat. 2 hours later, I am walking out of Gary's office with a signed deed in my pocket, keys to a 80-foot yacht in my hand, and a rapidly growing sense of dread about how exactly I am going to explain this to my wife. The drive home feels longer than usual, even though traffic is light for a Wednesday afternoon. And I keep the radio off because I don't want to hear any news yet. Don't want confirmation that the thing I am preparing for is actually happening. Because as long as I don't hear it on the news, I can still pretend this is just paranoid overreaction, and not the beginning of the end of the world. Our house is in a nice suburb about 20 minutes from downtown. One of those neighborhoods with good schools and safe streets where everyone knows their neighbors, and the biggest concern used to be whether the HOA would approve your fence color. I pull into the driveway and sit there for a minute, just staring at our front door, trying to figure out what words I am going to use. But there is really no good way to say I spent our entire life savings on a yacht, because I think zombies are coming. So eventually I just get out of the car and head inside to face the music. Linda's in the kitchen working on her laptop when I walk in, probably putting together another real estate listing because she is one of the top agents in Seattle and takes her work seriously. And she glances up when she hears me but doesn't stop typing. "Hey babe, how was work?" she asks in that distracted way that means she is in the middle of something and only half paying attention. "I didn't actually go to work today, called in sick and went yacht shopping instead. But that is not the part I lead with." "Interesting day," I say, which is possibly the understatement of the century. Something happened. She must hear something in my voice because she stops typing and turns to look at me properly. And after 20 years of marriage, she can read my face like a book. "What did you do?" It is not really a question so much as an accusation. Like she already knows whatever I am about to say is going to be bad. I pull out the deed and set it on the kitchen counter between us. And for a moment she just stares at it without picking it up. Like maybe if she doesn't touch it then it will not be real. "Please tell me that is not what I think it is," she says quietly. "It is a yacht deed, I admit, because there is really no point in trying to sugarcoat this. 80-foot motor yacht, excellent condition, great systems, perfect for you, bought a yacht." She picks up the deed now, reads it, and I watch her face go through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, disbelief, And then anger. You bought an $800,000 yacht without discussing it with me first. I know how it sounds. But $800,000, Silas. Her voice goes up about 3 octaves. And I hear footsteps on the stairs, which means the girls heard her yelling and are probably on their way down to see what the drama is about. That is our entire savings. Every penny we have worked for. And you just spent it on a boat without even asking me. I need to make her understand. Need to explain about the memo and Marcus, and the fact that in maybe a week, none of this money is going to matter anyway, because civilization is about to collapse. But I cannot tell her about the classified document without getting Marcus in serious trouble, and besides, she wouldn't believe me even if I showed it to her. Something bad is coming, I say instead, which sounds completely insane even to my own ears. I cannot tell you exactly how I know, but I know, and we need to be prepared, and the yacht is how we prepare. She is looking at me like I have lost my mind, which from her perspective I probably have. Prepared for what exactly, I don't know all the details. I hedge, but there are some concerning reports about a disease outbreak, and if it spreads the way I think it might, then we are going to need somewhere safe to go. Somewhere away from the cities, and a yacht gives us that option. A disease outbreak. She says it flat. Skeptical. So your solution is to buy a boat. A yacht. I correct automatically, which is possibly the worst thing I could say in this moment because she looks like she wants to throw something at my head. And yes, because if people start panicking and the cities become dangerous, then we can get out on the water where we will be safe. And the yacht is completely self-sufficient with solar power and water desalination, so we could potentially stay out there for months or even years if necessary. Linda sets the deed down carefully, like she is trying very hard to maintain control. Silas, do you hear yourself right now? You sound completely paranoid. This isn't normal behavior. Normal people don't spend their life savings on a yacht because they read some scary news articles. This is a breakdown of some kind. And I think you need to talk to someone professionally. Because this isn't okay. I am not having a breakdown, I insist. Even though I can see how from her perspective this looks exactly like a midlife crisis meltdown. I am being realistic about potential threats. And yes, maybe I am being overly cautious, but if I am right, then this yacht is going to save our lives. And if I am wrong, then we own a very nice boat, and we can sell it later, for probably close to what I paid. She shakes her head slowly, and I can see tears starting to form in her eyes, which is somehow worse than the anger. You know what the really crazy part is? It is not even that you bought the yacht. It is that you didn't trust me enough to talk to me about it first. 20 years of marriage, and you just made a decision that affects our entire family without even consulting me. What does that say about us? It says I was trying to protect you. I tell her, though even as the words come out I know they are not enough. It says I saw a threat coming and I took action. And yes, I should have talked to you first, but there wasn't time. And I need you to trust me on this even though I cannot explain everything. Trust you. She laughs, but there is no humor in it. You just proved I cannot trust you. You went behind my back, spent every penny we have, and now you want me to just accept it because you have got some vague bad feeling about the future. The kitchen door swings open and Emma walks in. Our 16-year-old daughter, who is currently in that phase where everything her parents do is embarrassing and mortifying. Why is Mom yelling? She asks, though from her tone I suspect she already knows this is somehow my fault. What did you do now, Dad? Your father bought a boat, Linda says, before I can answer. Emma's eyes go wide, like a little boat, like an 80-foot yacht that cost $800,000. Linda clarifies, and I watch Emma's expression go from curious to horrified. Oh my God, Dad, what is wrong with you? She pulls out her phone and starts typing frantically. probably texting her friends about her insane father. Do you know how embarrassing this is? Everyone at school is going to think we are those weird preppers who have a bunker and stockpile canned food. And now we are boat people too. I cannot deal with this. It is a yacht, not a boat, I mutter, which is definitely not helping my case. And Sophie chooses that moment to come bouncing into the kitchen because our 12-year-old has the opposite reaction to everything that Emma does. Did you really buy a yacht? Sophie asks with excitement in her voice that suggests she thinks this is actually cool. Can we name it? Can I pick the name? Oh, can we paint it? I want to paint a skull and crossbones on the side like a pirate ship. It already has a name, I tell her. Grateful that at least one member of my family isn't treating me like I have lost my mind. It is called Serenity. Sophie wrinkles her nose. That is a boring name. We should call it something better. Like Fortress or Revenge or the Dread Pirate Sophie. She is practically vibrating with excitement now. Dad, this is so cool. We are going to live on a yacht, can I tell my friends? We are not living on the yacht, Linda says firmly. Your father made a mistake, and we are going to figure out how to fix it. But this is not a long-term plan. I look at Sophie's eager face, and then at Emma's disgusted expression, and Linda's barely contained fury. And I know I have just created a rift in my family that is going to take a lot of work to repair. But I also know that in a few days when the news starts reporting the outbreak, I am going to be vindicated. Just give me a week, I say to Linda. 1 week. If nothing happens, if everything's fine, then I will admit I overreacted, and we can figure out what to do with the yacht. But if I am right, if something does happen, then you will understand why I did this. A week, she repeats, and I cannot tell if she is agreeing or just too tired to argue anymore. Fine, 1 week. But Silas, if this is nothing, if you just threw away our savings for no reason, then we are going to have some very serious conversations about our marriage. She walks out of the kitchen, and Emma follows her after giving me one more look that suggests I am the worst father in the world, which leaves just me and Sophie standing there. I think it is cool, Dad, Sophie says, giving me a quick hug. Even if everyone else thinks you are crazy, I think having a yacht is awesome. Thanks, kiddo, I tell her. And I mean it because right now she is the only person in this house who doesn't think I have completely lost my mind. Want to come see it this weekend? We can check out all the features, and maybe I will let you help me install some upgrades. Her eyes light up. Really? Can I help with the pirate flag? We are not putting a pirate flag on it. But yes, you can help with other things. I am already mentally running through the list of modifications I need to make steel shutters for the windows. Reinforced hull plating, expanded solar panel array, some kind of greenhouse setup on the upper deck. And definitely a way to keep chickens because having a renewable food source is going to be critical. There is a lot of work to do to get it ready. Ready for what? I look at my daughter. This smart, curious 12-year-old who still believes her father isn't an idiot. And I want to tell her the truth. But how do you explain to a child that you think the world is about to end? Just ready, I say instead, for whatever comes next. Over the next 3 months, I spend every spare moment at the marina working on the yacht. And it becomes pretty clear pretty fast that Linda's not speaking to me except when absolutely necessary. She goes through the motions, makes dinner, does laundry, keeps the household running. But there is this wall between us now that wasn't there before. And I know I put it there by not trusting her with the truth. Emma's disgusted with me and spends all her time with friends, coming home only to sleep, and making sure I know exactly how much I have ruined her life by being the weird yacht dad. Only Sophie seems genuinely excited about the whole thing, showing up at the marina on weekends with sandwiches and questions about what I am doing and why. Why are you putting metal over the windows? She asks one Saturday while I am installing steel shutters that can be locked down from the inside, security. I tell her, because that is the simplest answer, in case someone tries to break in. Who would break into a yacht? You would be surprised what people will do when they are desperate. I am thinking about the chaos that is coming, about how fast civilization falls apart when the rules stop applying. But I don't say any of that to her. Better to have protection and not need it than need it and not have it. She accepts this with a nod and hands me the next bolt. What about the chicken coop? Why do we need chickens on a boat? Eggs, I explain, tightening down the mounting bracket. Chickens lay eggs every day, which means fresh protein. And they are easy to care for as long as you keep them fed and watered. Plus, if we ever need meat, we have that option too. Though I am hoping it doesn't come to that. So it is like a floating farm, Sophie says with delight. Are we getting any other animals? Can we have a goat? Goats can eat anything, and they make milk. No goats, I tell her firmly, because while the idea of having milk is appealing, the reality of keeping a goat on a yacht sounds like a nightmare. Chickens are enough. Maybe we will add more later if we need to. But for now, let's focus on getting the basics working. The harbor master, a weathered old guy named Frank, who has seen it all and is apparently unimpressed by most of it, stops by while I am installing the solar panel expansion. And he looks at my setup with the kind of expression that suggests he thinks I am making things way more complicated than they need to be. You planning on living on this thing full time? He asks, watching me wire up the fourth panel. Possibly, I admit, because there is no point in lying to someone who is going to notice when we suddenly move aboard permanently. Want to be prepared in case we need to. Prepared for what? I shrug, not wanting to get into it. Just being cautious. Want to make sure we are self-sufficient. He studies the solar array, the wind turbines I am mounting, the greenhouse frame I am building on the upper deck. You know something I don't. Just a feeling, I tell him, which is technically true. Bad things coming, maybe? Want to be ready. Frank nods slowly like this makes perfect sense to him, which honestly surprises me until he says, spent 40 years in the Navy, saw some things. When experienced men start preparing like this, usually means they got good reason. You need any help, you let me know. It is the first time someone hasn't treated me like I am crazy. And I am so grateful for that. I almost want to hug him. Actually, if you know anyone who might want to pitch in on this project, I could use the extra hands. Not asking for free labor, I will pay fair wages, but I am trying to get everything ready as fast as possible. There is a retired captain 2 slips over, Frank says. Jim Harrison, good man, knows boats better than most. I will send him your way. True to his word. The next day, an older guy shows up while I am welding steel plating to the hull, and he watches me work for a few minutes before introducing himself. Frank says you are preparing for something, he says without preamble. Says you might need help. I cut the welder and flip up my mask to look at him properly. He is maybe 65, fit for his age, with the kind of weathered face that says he has spent decades on the water. Jim Harrison, I guess. And he nods. Silas Holt. Frank said you were Navy? 40 years. Just retired last year. Submarine service mostly. Then surface ships toward the end. You really think something's coming? Yeah, I admit, because there is something about this guy that makes me think he will understand. Cannot tell you exactly what or when, but my gut says it is soon. And my gut's usually right about these things. Jim looks at the yacht, taking in all the modifications I have made, the reinforced hull, the security cameras, the expanded power systems. You know what you are doing with all this? Marine engineer by trade. So yeah, I know boats. Not Navy-level expertise, but I can make this thing work. Show me what you have got planned. It is not really a question so much as a command. And I find myself walking him through the whole setup, the self-sufficiency systems. The defensive features. The storage capacity I am building for long-term survival. He asks smart questions, points out a few things I have missed, and by the end of the tour I realize I want this guy on my team if things go bad. If something does happen, I say carefully, and you need somewhere to go, you are welcome here. There is room for you, and frankly I could use someone with your experience. Jim considers this for a long moment. What makes you think I would want to throw in with you? Because you didn't laugh when I said I was preparing. Because you ask smart questions instead of thinking I am crazy. Because you have got that look in your eyes like you have seen enough of the world to know that bad things are always possible. I pause. And because I don't think you want to die alone in your sailboat if the worst happens. He cracks a smile at that. Fair point. All right. I am in if it comes to that. But I am helping you finish these modifications whether it does or not. Because watching you work is making me nervous. And I cannot let a perfectly good yacht get ruined by amateur welding. My welding is not amateur, I protest. But I am grinning because this is exactly the kind of help I need. Over the next few weeks, Jim becomes a regular fixture at the marina, showing up most days to help with installations and offering suggestions that honestly make the yacht better than what I could have done alone. He has got this dry sense of humor that makes the work more bearable, cracking jokes about zombie movies and making comments about my prepper paranoia that somehow don't feel insulting because he is actually helping me prepare. Sophie adores him immediately, following him around asking questions about the Navy and submarines and whether he has ever fought pirates. And he is surprisingly patient with her. Your daughter's sharp, he tells me one afternoon while we are testing the desalination system. Asks good questions, picks things up fast. Yeah, she has always been like that, I say, watching Sophie help him check the water output valves. Emma's the creative one, all arts and music and drama. But Sophie's got that engineering brain, wants to understand how everything works. Both good traits to have, Jim says. Though I gotta ask, what does your wife think about all this? I grimace. She thinks I have lost my mind. Hasn't really forgiven me for buying the yacht. Definitely hasn't bought into the whole preparation thing. We are basically coexisting in the same house right now. But there is not a lot of warmth there. She will come around when it happens, Jim says with certainty. Women are practical like that right now. It seems crazy because nothing's happened yet. But when shit hits the fan, she will be grateful you prepared. If she is even willing to come to the yacht when the time comes, I mutter. Because I have been genuinely worried that Linda might refuse out of spite or principle, or just because she is that angry at me. Jim snorts. She will come. Trust me, when people see what is happening out there, they get real flexible real fast about their principles. Your wife's smart, she will choose survival over pride. I hope he is right because I am not sure what I will do if Linda refuses to leave when the outbreak starts. I cannot force her. Cannot drag her and the girls onto the yacht against their will. But I also cannot just let them stay behind to die. It is a problem I don't have a solution for yet. So I push it to the back of my mind and focus on the work that needs doing. The last major addition is the chicken coop, which requires more negotiation with Frank than I expected, because apparently keeping livestock on a yacht at a luxury marina is frowned upon. Sir, this is not a farm, Frank says. When I explain what I want to do, we have rules about this kind of thing. I will pay extra fees. I offer whatever it takes. I need the chickens for food security, and they will be in a proper coop, kept clean, not bothering anyone. You will not even know they are there. He sighs, like I am making his life unnecessarily difficult. Fine, but if those chickens cause any complaints from other boat owners, they are gone. Understood. Understood. Thank you. I shake his hand and get to work building the coop, which goes on the aft deck where it will be protected from the weather but still get enough ventilation. I buy 10 laying hens from a farm supply place outside the city, and they adapt to the yacht surprisingly well, settling into their new home like they were born for boat life. Sophie immediately names all of them. Henrietta Cluck Norris, Amelia Eggart, and 7 others with equally ridiculous names, and takes over their care completely, checking on them multiple times a day and collecting eggs with the kind of pride that makes me think maybe bringing her into this preparation wasn't a mistake after all. September rolls around and I am spending 12-hour days at the marina, trying to finish everything before whatever's coming actually arrives. The news hasn't reported anything yet beyond some vague mentions of unusual flu activity in China, but I am monitoring the CDC website obsessively, and I can see the pattern forming: more cases, spreading faster, mortality rates climbing. Marcus hasn't contacted me again, which either means he is too busy dealing with the crisis or he has been silenced somehow. But I don't need him to tell me what is coming. I can read the data myself. The final stockpiling phase is the hardest part because it means spending even more money that we technically don't have anymore. But I raid our credit cards and drain the last bit of savings. Linda doesn't know about to buy 2 years' worth of non-perishable food, a complete pharmacy's worth of medical supplies, seeds for the greenhouse, tools, spare parts, weapons, mostly fishing equipment that can double as defensive gear because I don't want to spook Linda with an arsenal, and enough miscellaneous survival equipment to fill half the yacht's storage holds. Every trip to Costco feels like preparing for the apocalypse, because that is exactly what I am doing. Loading up carts with industrial-sized packages of rice and beans and canned goods, while other shoppers give me weird looks. Having a party? The checkout clerk asks one day while ringing up my 3rd cart full of supplies, something like that. I tell her, because explaining that I am preparing for societal collapse seems like a conversation I don't want to have. She looks at all the freeze-dried meals and emergency rations. Must be one hell of a party. You have no idea, I mutter, and hand her my credit card hoping it doesn't get declined, because I am pretty sure I have maxed it out at this point. Linda notices the credit card charges eventually, of course she does, because she handles our finances, and there is no hiding multiple $5,000 purchases from Costco. She confronts me at dinner one night while Emma and Sophie are upstairs doing homework. Are you having some kind of crisis I should know about? Because the credit card bills are insane right now, and our bank account is empty, and I am starting to seriously worry about your mental health. I am preparing, I tell her, which at this point is my standard response to her concerns. Making sure we have everything we need for the yacht. Silas, we don't need 2 years of food for a yacht we are never going to live on, she says. And there is this exhausted tone in her voice, like she has given up on being angry and moved straight to resignation. This has gone way beyond being cautious. This is full-blown paranoia, and I don't know how to help you anymore. You don't need to help me, I say quietly. You just need to trust that I know what I am doing. But I don't trust that, she admits. I don't trust any of this. You have changed, Silas. Ever since you bought that yacht, you have become obsessed with this idea that something terrible is going to happen, and it is affecting our whole family. Emma's embarrassed to have friends over. Sophie's spending all her time at the marina instead of with her classmates. And us, we barely talk anymore, except to argue about money. I want to tell her about the memo, about Marcus, about the pandemic that is brewing in Asia and will hit the US within days. But I cannot without breaking Marcus's trust and possibly getting him arrested for leaking classified information. One more week, I say instead. That is all I ask. If nothing happens in the next week, I will admit I overreacted and we can figure out what to do with all these supplies. And if something does happen, then you will understand why I did all this, and you will be grateful we have somewhere to go. She shakes her head slowly. I hope for your sake that you are right, because if you are not, I don't know how we come back from this. That conversation happens on the 14th of October. On the 15th of October, everything changes. I am at work trying to focus on designing an offshore platform but mostly refreshing news websites every 5 minutes. And that is when my phone buzzes with a text from Marcus. Just 3 words. It is happening, go. My stomach drops so fast I feel like I might throw up. I don't ask for clarification or confirmation. Just grab my coat and bag and head for the door. My boss catches me on the way out. Silas, where are you going? We have got the client meeting in an hour. Family emergency, I lie. Except it is not really a lie because my family is about to be in serious danger if I don't get to them right now. I have to leave. This is really unprofessional, he starts. But I am already out the door and practically running to my car. I turn on the radio as I am pulling out of the parking lot. And at first it is just normal programming. But then I catch a news update interrupting regular broadcast. Reports coming in from multiple cities of violent attacks and unexplained aggressive behavior. Hospitals in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Portland are reporting being overwhelmed with patients exhibiting rabies-like symptoms. The CDC has issued a statement recommending people avoid large crowds and stay indoors if possible. While they investigate, I change stations. Martial law has been declared in several West Coast cities, as authorities struggle to contain what officials are describing as a public health crisis of unprecedented scope. Citizens are advised to shelter in place and avoid contact with anyone showing signs of illness. Another station. Videos circulating on social media appear to show victims of this mysterious illness attacking other people, though authorities caution that many of these videos may be misleading or fabricated. The White House has scheduled a press conference for this afternoon to address growing concerns. I am driving too fast, weaving through traffic, my heart pounding so hard I can feel it in my throat. This is it. This is really it. Everything I prepared for. Everything people thought I was crazy for doing. It is all actually happening, and I need to get to my family right now before the cities collapse completely. I try calling Linda, but she doesn't answer the first 3 times. And when she finally picks up on the 4th call, she sounds annoyed. What? I am in the middle of showing a house. Turn on the news, I tell her, trying to keep my voice calm even though I feel like I am about to hyperventilate. Any channel. Just turn on the news right now. Silas, I don't have time for your conspiracy theories, Linda. Turn on the fucking news. I never yell at her. Never. 20 years of marriage. And I don't think I have ever raised my voice like this. And it must shock her because I hear movement on her end, and then the sound of a television. Several seconds of silence. And then she says quietly, "Oh my God." Listen to me very carefully, I say, taking a deep breath to steady myself. You need to get the girls right now. Go get Sophie from school, find Emma wherever she is. Pack 1 bag each with essentials, only clothes, medications, important documents, nothing else. Meet me at the marina in 1 hour. Can you do that? Wait, what? We are not leaving our house. We are leaving right now, today. And we are going to the yacht. Because this is exactly what I prepared for. And I need you to trust me on this. Please, Linda. I know I haven't given you much reason to trust me lately. But I am begging you. Just do what I am asking. Get the girls and meet me at the marina in 1 hour. There is a long pause where I think she might refuse. Might tell me I am insane and hang up. But then she says, "How long have you known this was coming?" 3 months, I admit, because lying at this point seems stupid. Got a tip from someone at the CDC and you didn't tell me. You wouldn't have believed me. Another pause. And then I hear her making a decision. 1 hour, Marina. But Silas, if you are wrong about this, if this all blows over and turns out to be nothing, we are done. Do you understand? Our marriage is over. I understand, I tell her, even though the thought of losing her terrifies me almost as much as the outbreak. I will see you in an hour. Traffic is getting worse by the minute as people start to realize something's wrong and everyone tries to leave work early. I make it to the marina in 45 minutes instead of the usual 20. And Jim's already there waiting by his sailboat with a stuffed duffel bag. It is happening, isn't it? He calls out when he sees me running towards Serenity. Yeah, get your stuff and get aboard. We are leaving as soon as my family gets here. He doesn't argue, just grabs his bag and follows me onto the yacht. I start going through my pre-departure checklist: engines, fuel, water, electrical systems, and everything checks out. Because I have been maintaining this thing obsessively for 3 months. Specifically for this moment. Jim helps me prep without needing to be told what to do. His Navy training kicking in automatically. Linda's SUV pulls into the marina parking lot 50 minutes after our call. And I have never been more relieved to see anything in my life. She gets out with both girls, each of them carrying a single backpack like I asked. And the look on her face is a mixture of fear and anger and something else I cannot quite identify. The roads are getting crazy, she says when they reach the yacht. Everyone's trying to leave the city at once. Just in time then, I tell her, taking her bag and helping her aboard. Emma and Sophie follow. And I notice Emma's been crying. Dad, my friends, Emma says, voice breaking. I texted them, but most of them aren't answering. And the ones who did say their parents don't believe it is serious, and they are not evacuating. And I don't know if they are going to be okay, I know. Sweetheart, I am sorry, I say, even though sorry seems completely inadequate. Right now we need to focus on keeping our family safe. And then we will try to help others if we can. But you are my priority. Sophie's holding her stuffed rabbit, the same one I brought her when I first bought the yacht. And she looks smaller than usual, scared in a way I haven't seen from her in years. Dad, what is happening? The news said people are getting sick, but they will not say what it is. It is a virus, I tell her, because she is smart enough to handle some truth. A really bad one that makes people violent. And the CDC doesn't have a cure yet. So the safest thing is for us to get away from the cities where it is spreading. Linda's phone rings and she pulls it out, looks at the screen, and I see her face go pale. It is Derek, she says, which is the absolute last thing I want to deal with right now because Linda's brother has spent the last 3 months making fun of me for buying the yacht. And now he probably wants help. Don't answer it, I say, starting to release the dock lines because I want to be moving. Want to be away from shore where it is safe. She answers it anyway. Derek, are you okay? A pause while she listens. And then her expression shifts to horror. Where are you? What? No, stay there. We will. She looks at me, Silas. They are trapped. Derek and Rachel and Tyler. They are at their apartment in Capitol Hill. And there is infected people outside and they cannot get out. Every instinct I have says to leave them behind. That Derek made his choice when he spent months mocking my preparations, and now he can deal with the consequences. But Linda's looking at me with desperation and fear. And I know I cannot say no even though I want to. Where exactly? I ask through gritted teeth. She puts Derek on speaker, and his voice comes through panicked and desperate, completely different from his usual confident smugness. 15th and John, Building 6B, 6th floor. Silas. Man, I know I have been an asshole about the yacht thing, but please. There is things everywhere down there. They are attacking people, and I don't know what to do. Stay inside. Lock all your doors and windows. We are coming. I hear myself saying, even though part of me is screaming that this is a terrible idea. Give us 20 minutes. I hand the phone back to Linda and turn to Jim. We need to make a detour, Capitol Hill, in and out. 15 minutes max. That is insane, Jim says. Though he is already helping me prepare the yacht for travel. We should be getting as far from the city as possible, not going deeper into it. I know. But it is family, and I cannot leave them. I fire up the engines and they rumble to life with that beautiful sound. That means everything's working. You don't have to come with me for this part. Stay on the yacht with Linda and the girls. Keep the engines running. And if we are not back in 30 minutes, you leave without us. Like hell I am staying behind, Jim says. You will need backup. And I have got a couple of grenades left over from my retirement gift to myself. So let's go rescue your idiot brother-in-law. You have grenades. I stare at him. Navy retirement. Don't ask questions. He grins. And despite the terror of the situation, I find myself laughing because this old man is exactly the kind of crazy I need right now. The boat ride to Capitol Hill takes 15 minutes. That feel more like 15 years. And I can see the city starting to burn even from the water. Smoke rising from multiple locations. Sirens everywhere. The sound of gunfire echoing off buildings. Linda and the girls are below deck because I don't want them seeing this. But Jim's up top with me scanning the streets with binoculars. This is bad, he says, which might be the understatement of the century. Real bad. I count maybe 50 of those things just in the area around their building. Can we thin them out somehow before we go in? Distraction, maybe. Draw them away from the entrance. He pulls out his flare gun from his duffel bag. I light this. Toss it a block away. Most of them should follow the light and noise. Will not give us long, but it might be enough. We dock at the closest pier to Derek's building, and I grab the fire axe I stowed on board while Jim loads his flare gun and grabs what looks like actual military cherry bombs from his bag. Where the hell did you get those? I ask. Like I said, don't ask questions. You ready? I am not ready. We'll never be ready for this. But Derek and Rachel and their 8-year-old son are trapped up there, and I cannot leave them to die no matter how much Derek deserves it for being an asshole. Let's do this. The street is worse than I expected, bodies everywhere and infected shambling around looking for victims. They notice us immediately and start moving in our direction. But Jim fires the flare before they get close, and the bright red light arcs through the air and lands 3 blocks away. Maybe 20 of the infected turn and follow it, drawn by the brightness and the hissing sound. Jim lights the cherry bombs and tosses them in a different direction, and the explosions draw another 15 infected away from the building entrance. We are left with maybe 20 between us and Derek's apartment, which are terrible odds but better than 50. Go, Jim yells, and we run. The first infected reaches me and I swing the fire axe, catching it in the shoulder because I was aiming for the head, and my aim is shit when I am terrified. The woman, she used to be a woman. Now she is something else, goes down, but she is still moving. Still trying to grab at my legs. So I have to hit her again, and this time I don't miss. Jim's next to me, taking down infected with the kind of brutal efficiency that comes from decades of military training. And we fight our way to the building entrance. The door's locked, which is both good and bad. Good, because it means infected haven't gotten inside. Bad, because we need to get in right now. I kick at it, but the lock holds. So I take the axe to the handle and break it off, and then we are through and slamming the door behind us just as more infected reach the entrance. The stairwell is dark and empty and echoes with our footsteps as we climb, and I am already exhausted by the second floor because 45 years old is not the right age to be running up 6 flights of stairs while carrying an axe and running on pure adrenaline. Jim's ahead of me, moving like he is 20 years younger. And I push myself to keep up even though my lungs are burning. 4th floor, and there is an infected in the stairwell coming down. And Jim just shoves past me and takes it out with a combat knife that he apparently also had in his magical duffel bag of military surplus items. 5th floor, 6th floor, and we are at Derek's apartment door. I pound on it. Derek, open up. There is movement inside. And then the door cracks open, and Derek's face appears, pale and terrified and looking nothing like the smug, confident asshole who spent 3 months making fun of my yacht purchase. Oh, thank God, he starts, but I cut him off. No time. Get your family, we are leaving right now. Rachel appears with Tyler, and they each have a small bag, which at least shows some sense of priorities. We need to run, I tell them, making sure they understand the situation. Fast, don't stop for anything. If something grabs you, you are on your own because we cannot carry you and fight at the same time. Understood? Rachel's eyes go wide. What? You cannot just, this is not a negotiation. Jim interrupts in his best military command voice. You keep up or you die. Simple as that. Now move. We run back down the stairwell. And it is even worse than coming up because now Derek's family is with us. And Tyler's 8 years old, and cannot move as fast as we need him to. Derek's carrying his son, which helps, but by the time we hit the 3rd floor we can hear infected in the stairwell behind us, and they are gaining. 2nd floor, and there are infected below us too. At least 5 of them. And we are trapped between 2 groups with no good options. Jim pulls out what might actually be his last grenade. And I am about to tell him we cannot risk it because the explosion could bring down the building. But he has already pulled the pin and tossed it down the stairwell. Run. He yells and we run. The explosion is deafening in the enclosed space. And I feel the concussion wave hit my back as we burst through the ground floor door and into the lobby. Most of the infected that were blocking our way are dead or stunned. And we scramble over them and out into the street where even more infected are converging on our position. The yacht is right there, maybe 100 yards. And it is the longest 100 yards of my life. Derek's gasping for breath. Tyler's crying. Rachel screaming something I cannot make out over the sound of infected moaning and Jim's yelling. And my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. An infected grabs Rachel's arm and she screams louder. And I swing my axe without thinking, catching the thing in the head. And she pulls free with just scratches that might be bites, but there is no time to check. We reach the pier and I can see Linda at the yacht controls ready to pull away. And we jump aboard, literally jump, because Jim and I are throwing people onto the deck. And as soon as everyone's on, I yell go. And Linda hits the throttle and we are moving. Infected pile onto the pier behind us, reaching out with grasping hands. And some of them fall into the water where they immediately sink. Because apparently whatever the virus does to them doesn't include the ability to swim. We pull away fast, engines at full power. And I watch the shore recede behind us with a mixture of relief and horror. Because we made it, but I can see people still on shore who aren't going to make it. Can see the city burning and falling apart in real time. Derek collapses on the deck, gasping for air. And Rachel's checking Tyler for bites and crying. And Linda's at the helm doing exactly what I asked her to do, which is get us away from shore as fast as possible. Jim's leaning against the rail, catching his breath. And he looks at me and shakes his head with this expression that says we just did something incredibly stupid and somehow survived. Thanks, Derek manages to gasp out between breaths. Silas, I know I have been. Thank you. I should probably say something gracious or forgiving, but I am too exhausted and angry and terrified to be gracious. You mocked me for 3 months, I tell him flatly. Called me paranoid. Said I was wasting my money. Now you are alive because of that yacht you made fun of. He nods. Cannot even argue because we both know it is true. I was an asshole. I am sorry. Yeah, you were. I turn to check on Linda and the girls, leaving Derek to deal with his own guilt. And when I get to the helm, Linda just looks at me with tears in her eyes. You were right, she says quietly. About all of it. The yacht, the preparation, everything. I should have trusted you. You are here now, I tell her, and pull her into a hug even though she is trying to steer. That is what matters. We are all here. We are all safe. And we have somewhere to go. We motor out past the breakwater and into open water, and I set our course for 2 miles offshore because Jim's military experience suggests that is far enough that infected cannot reach us, but close enough that we can still observe what is happening on shore. The sun's setting by the time we drop anchor, and in the dying light I can see Seattle burning. can see the civilization we knew collapsing in real time. Below deck, Derek and Rachel and Tyler are in one of the guest cabins. Emma and Sophie are in their room. And Jim's claimed a small cabin near the engine room. Nobody's talking much because what is there to say when you have just watched the world end? I find Linda sitting in the main salon staring at nothing, and I sit down next to her. First night, I say, because someone needs to say something even if it is completely inadequate. "How did you know?" she asks. "Really? How did you know this was coming?" I am too tired to keep secrets anymore. I have a friend at the CDC, Marcus Chen. We went to college together. 3 months ago, he sent me a classified memo about H5N1 mutation. Human-to-human transmission, projected outbreak timeline. He is probably in serious trouble now for leaking it, but he saved our lives. 3 months, she repeats. You knew for 3 months and you couldn't tell me. If I had shown you the memo, I would have been admitting to possessing classified documents, which is a federal crime. Marcus could have gone to prison, and you wouldn't have believed it anyway. You thought I was crazy, even without knowing about the memo. She doesn't have a response to that because we both know she would have just thought I was deeper into my paranoid delusion. We sit in silence for a while, and finally she says, "I am sorry I didn't trust you. You spent 3 months trying to save us, and I spent 3 months being angry at you for it." "You didn't know," I tell her, taking her hand. "How could you know? I am just glad you came when I called." "Of course I came. You are my husband." She squeezes my hand. "So what now? We just stay on the yacht forever, for a while at least. Until we figure out how bad it is, how long it lasts, whether there is any safe places left." I gesture around at the yacht that is now our home. We have got everything we need to survive: food, water, power, shelter. We can fish for protein, the garden will produce vegetables, the chickens give us eggs. We are completely self-sufficient out here. How long can we last? 2 years on stored food, if we are careful. Longer if we supplement with fishing. The solar panels and desalination mean we have unlimited power and water as long as the equipment holds up. We can do this, Linda. We can survive. She leans against me, and for the first time in 3 months I feel like we are on the same team again. "I love you," she says quietly. "Even when I thought you were crazy, I still loved you." "I love you too," I tell her, and mean it more than ever because this woman followed me onto a yacht, even though she thought I had lost my mind. And that kind of trust is worth everything. That night, everyone's too wired to sleep. So we end up in the salon together, all 11 of us, now that Derek's family and Jim are part of our survival crew. Sophie names the yacht officially now that we are living on it, painting over Serenity with Fortress in her best handwriting. And somehow that seems appropriate, because that is exactly what this yacht has become. Our floating fortress against the end of the world. The first week passes in a blur of adjustment and routine building, and I quickly realize that having 11 people on an 80-foot yacht requires a level of organization I hadn't fully anticipated when I was doing all this preparation alone. We establish watch rotations because someone needs to be monitoring the radio and scanning the shore at all times. And Jim takes charge of that schedule with military precision that makes everyone feel slightly more secure. Derek offers to help with watches too, which surprises me until I realize he is desperate to prove he is not useless. And while I am still angry at him for 3 months of mockery, I am also practical enough to accept the help. Linda handles food rationing because she has always been better at organization than me, creating a system where we track every meal and every supply, so we know exactly how long we can last, and her spreadsheets make me feel simultaneously grateful and guilty, because this is the kind of detail work I should have done during my preparation phase, but didn't. Emma's surprisingly good with the fishing equipment once we show her how it works. And she and Sophie spend hours off the back deck with poles and nets, competing to see who can catch more. which is exactly the kind of normal sibling rivalry that makes everything feel slightly less apocalyptic. The hardest part is watching the shore through binoculars and seeing the city we knew being destroyed in slow motion. Buildings burning and infected roaming the streets, and occasionally we see survivors trying to make it to the water only to be overwhelmed before they can reach safety. Jim suggests we could try rescuing more people, that we have the capacity and the skills. But every time we discuss it, we come back to the same problem: we don't know who is infected and who is not, and bringing someone aboard who turns into one of those things would doom us all. So we make the hard choice to stay where we are, and hope that other people found their own ways to survive. Week 2 brings our first new arrival, though, because Jim spots a lifeboat drifting about a mile from our position, and he is certain there is someone inside even though they are not moving much. Could be infected, I point out when he brings it to my attention, though part of me knows we are going to check anyway, because leaving someone to die when we might save them feels like giving up the last piece of our humanity. Could also be someone who needs help, Jim counters, and that is how we end up motoring over to investigate with weapons ready, and everyone else locked safely below deck, just in case this goes badly. The person in the lifeboat turns out to be an old man, maybe 65, maybe older. Hard to tell with the sunburn and dehydration. And he has got a Navy tattoo on his arm, which Jim notices immediately. "Hey," Jim calls out to him, "you alive?" The man stirs and looks up with the kind of confusion that comes from spending too long alone at sea, and his voice is so hoarse we can barely hear him. "Help, please. He has been out here for days at least, maybe longer, surviving on rainwater and whatever emergency rations came with the lifeboat. And when we pull him aboard, he is barely conscious. His name is Captain Harrison, and he has got stories that make our shore evacuation seem easy by comparison, because he was on a cruise ship when the outbreak hit and he watched 3,000 passengers and crew descend into chaos in a matter of hours. It started with one person, he tells us after we have gotten some water and food into him. His voice still rough but growing stronger. Someone got infected on shore leave and brought it back to the ship, bit a crew member in the hallway, and within 6 hours we had infected on every deck. People panicked, lifeboats launched, most of them capsized in rough seas. I got lucky, grabbed a boat that didn't flip and just drifted until you found me." "How long were you out there?" Linda asks, bringing him another bottle of water because the first one disappeared in about 30 seconds. "Week. Maybe more. Lost track of time." Harrison looks around the yacht with the kind of appreciation that comes from someone who knows boats. "You prepared for this? Built this setup intentionally?" "Yeah," I admit, because there is no point in hiding it now. "Had some advance warning. 3 months to get ready, smart man." He smiles weakly. "Most people didn't believe it until it was too late. You are ex-military." "Marine engineer, actually civilian. Just paranoid enough to take the threat seriously when I saw it coming." That seems to satisfy him. And over the next few days, as Harrison recovers, he becomes a valuable part of our crew, bringing decades of naval experience that complements Jim's military background and my engineering knowledge. Derek's intimidated by both of them, which honestly I enjoy more than I probably should, but he is smart enough to recognize that these men have skills he doesn't, and he should probably shut up and learn rather than trying to assert authority he doesn't have. By week 3, we have settled into something resembling normal life, or at least as normal as life can be when you are living on a yacht watching civilization collapse on shore. The garden I set up on the upper deck is producing baby lettuce and some herbs, which doesn't sound like much, but fresh greens make an enormous psychological difference when most of your diet is canned food and freeze-dried meals. The chickens are laying consistently 8 eggs a day from 10 hens, which gives us breakfast protein, And occasionally we have enough extra to make things like cookies or bread that require eggs. Sophie's appointed herself chief chicken keeper and takes the responsibility incredibly seriously, checking on them multiple times a day and collecting eggs with the kind of pride that makes me think she has found her calling in this new world. Emma's adapted to fishing life better than I expected, and she and Sophie have this unspoken competition going where they keep track of who catches more fish each week, which is the kind of normal teenage behavior that makes me feel like maybe we are not completely losing our humanity out here. The shore situation gets worse every day, though, and by week 4 we are seeing things that shouldn't be possible but definitely are. Silas, you need to see this. Jim calls one morning, handing me the binoculars and pointing toward the coast about 3 miles away. Something's different. I look, and at first, I don't understand what I am seeing. But then it clicks and my stomach drops because there is a lion, an actual lion, like from the zoo roaming the streets near the waterfront. And it is massive, way bigger than a lion should be. That is not normal, I say. Which is possibly the most obvious statement I have ever made. No, it is not. Jim agrees. Lions are what, 400 pounds? That thing looks like it is pushing 600, maybe more. And look at what it is doing. I focus the binoculars on the lion and realize it is feeding on something. And after a second, I recognize that it is eating an infected corpse, just tearing into it like it is a normal meal. Should we be worried about that? I ask. Though I already know the answer. Probably, Sarah says, and I turn to find her standing behind us with her own binoculars. Right. I forgot to mention Sarah in all the chaos. Dr. Sarah Chen, marine biologist, found her clinging to a research buoy about 2 weeks ago. When we went exploring a bit further from our anchorage, she has been incredibly valuable for understanding ocean patterns and fish behavior. But more importantly, she knows enough about biology to understand what we are potentially looking at here. Animals eating infected flesh. Sarah continues, still watching the lion through her binoculars. That is very bad from an epidemiological standpoint, because if the virus can jump species, and if animal biology reacts differently to it than human biology, we could be looking at some kind of mutation or enhancement. Sharks have already been acting strange. I have been tracking that, but land animals getting involved makes this significantly more complicated. Strange how? I ask, though I am not sure I want to know the answer. More aggressive than normal, appearing in groups when they should be solitary. And I have documented 3 instances of what appears to be coordinated hunting behavior that great whites shouldn't be capable of. If the virus is affecting their neural structures, enhancing predatory instincts, making them smarter, she trails off. But the implication is clear and terrifying. So we might have super intelligent sharks and mutant zoo animals to worry about on top of the zombies. Derek says, because of course he has been listening. That is just great. Perfect. Exactly what we needed. The technical term is enhanced predators. Sarah corrects, though I am not sure the terminology matters much when we are talking about lions that eat zombies and sharks that hunt in packs. And yes, if the pattern continues, we should expect accelerated evolution in any species that consumes infected tissue, though the timeline and extent of changes will vary based on individual biology and exposure levels. Over the next few days, we keep watch on the shore, and the animal situation gets progressively worse in ways that would seem impossible if we weren't watching it happen in real time. The lion is joined by others until there is a whole pride, 8 of them, all oversized, and they move through the city with the kind of coordinated hunting tactics that suggest intelligence beyond what lions normally possess. Bears appear too. 3 massive grizzlies that look more like trucks than animals, and they are working together to tear into buildings and root out any remaining survivors or infected. Where did all the infected go? Emma asks one afternoon when we are observing the shore. And it is a good question because the hordes of infected that were everywhere 2 weeks ago have significantly thinned out. Did they die? No, Harrison says grimly, pointing at a gorilla that has just emerged from a building with what looks like infected remains in its hands. They are being hunted. The mutant animals are eating them efficiently. It is horrifying to watch, but also fascinating in a terrible way, because we are seeing the food chain reorganize itself in real time as these enhanced predators systematically eliminate the infected population. Jim makes a dark joke about how maybe we should be grateful the animals are taking care of the zombie problem for us. But then Sarah points out that once the animals run out of infected to eat, they are going to start looking for other food sources, and we are definitely on that list. How far can these things swim? Derek asks, which is actually the first genuinely useful question he has asked in weeks. Like, if they wanted to reach us out here, could they make it 2 miles? Normal animals. No, Sarah explains. Most predators can swim, but not for extended distances. They'd exhaust themselves and drown. But if the virus has enhanced their stamina, their muscle efficiency, their cardiovascular systems, then yes, 2 miles might be achievable. We don't know the limits yet. Then we need to go farther. Derek pushes. 5 miles, 10 miles. Far enough that they definitely cannot reach us. That is a lot of fuel, I point out. Because while I did stockpile 500 gallons, that is not unlimited. And every mile we travel away from shore is a mile we would have to travel back if we need supplies. And if we are that far out, we are committed cannot just pop back to shore if we need something urgently. Better than being eaten by mutant lions, Derek argues. And honestly, I cannot disagree with his logic, even though I am still angry at him for being the reason we have to have this conversation in the first place. We have a family meeting that night, all 11 of us crammed into the salon, and we vote on whether to stay at 2 miles or move farther out. Jim and Harrison think we should scout the situation more before making any big moves. But Derek and Rachel are adamant that we need to create distance between us and the shore threats. And in the end, the vote comes down to Linda being the deciding factor between those who want to stay and those who want to go. I think we move, Linda says after a long pause, and I can see the weight of that decision on her face. Silas has kept us safe so far, and I trust his judgment. But Derek's right that these mutant animals are an unknown threat, and the smart play is to create distance until we understand what we are dealing with. All right, I say, even though part of me wants to argue that we are reacting too quickly, that we should gather more information first. We will move to 5 miles offshore. That should be far enough to be safe, but close enough that we are not completely isolated if other survivors try to contact us. The move happens the next morning, and it is both routine and terrifying because we are burning through fuel to get to a position where we are more exposed to weather and waves, but hopefully safer from animal threats. The water is darker out here, deeper, with swells that make the yacht rock in ways it didn't closer to shore. But Sophie loves it and declares us real ocean explorers now, which is the kind of innocent enthusiasm that keeps me from completely despairing about the future. Miguel finds us on day 21, or more accurately, we find him because Jim spots someone clinging to an overturned fishing boat, and by the time we get there, the person is barely hanging on. Miguel's 28 years old, professional fisherman from a family of fishermen, and he has got shark bites on his leg from regular non-mutated sharks, which is a relief because at least we know he is not infected with whatever the mutant animals have going on. Sarah patches him up with antibiotics from our medical supplies and stitches the wounds, and Miguel's so grateful he is almost crying. I can help, he insists, even though he should probably be resting fishing. I am really good at fishing. I can triple your catch easy. Just give me a chance to prove it. He is not lying about that skill either, because within a week of his recovery, our daily catch goes from maybe 10 pounds of fish to 40 pounds. Then 50 pounds, and suddenly we are eating fresh fish for 2 meals a day and smoking the excess for long-term storage. Miguel knows techniques I have never heard of. Commercial fishing methods that actually work for feeding a small community. And he teaches Emma and Sophie how to do everything properly, how to read the water, how to set nets, how to clean and preserve fish, so nothing goes to waste. You are wasting the best parts, Miguel tells Emma one day while showing her how to properly butcher a tuna. See this. Americans throw it away, but it is perfectly good, and this part here you can salt it and it lasts months. Emma makes a face at some of the parts he is pointing to, but she pays attention and learns, and I notice she is spending more time on deck working with Miguel than she is sulking in her cabin about missing her friends, which seems like progress. Sophie, of course, wants to learn everything and follows Miguel around asking endless questions about fish species and migration patterns, and whether sharks really sleep with their eyes open. Month 2 brings us into a rhythm that almost feels sustainable. Everyone with their assigned roles and responsibilities that keep the yacht running smoothly. I handle maintenance and engineering. Jim and Harrison manage security and navigation. Linda coordinates supplies and meal planning. Sarah studies the water and wildlife patterns. Miguel runs all fishing operations. Derek and Rachel help with general labor and watch rotations. And the kids Emma, Sophie, and Tyler handle chicken care, garden maintenance, and being kids as much as possible in this situation. The shore continues to change in ways that would be fascinating if they weren't so terrifying, because the mutant animals have essentially taken over the entire city and they are not just hunting anymore. They are establishing territories and hierarchies in something that looks disturbingly like organized society. The lion pride stays near the waterfront. The bears control the industrial district, and a group of about 12 gorillas has claimed downtown. And they are using tools, actual tools like rocks and pipes as weapons, which is so far beyond normal gorilla behavior that Sarah spends hours just watching them through the telescope and taking notes. This is evolution accelerated by viral enhancement. She explains to anyone who will listen. Normally, this kind of behavioral development would take millions of years. But the virus is rewriting their neural pathways so quickly that we are seeing changes in weeks instead of eons. They are learning, adapting, becoming more intelligent with every day that passes. Are they going to become smart enough to build boats? Sophie asks with the kind of innocent concern that only a 12-year-old can manage. Probably not. Sarah reassures her, though she doesn't sound as certain as I would like. Tool use is one thing, but complex engineering requires a level of abstract thinking that even enhanced primates shouldn't be capable of. That probably haunts me for days afterward. Because what if she is wrong? What if these animals do figure out how to reach us? What if we are not actually safe out here at all, but we cannot keep moving farther from shore because we are already burning through fuel at an unsustainable rate? And at some point we have to commit to a location and hope it is enough. Month 3 brings what I have been dreading since we first saw the mutant animals, our first direct encounter. And it happens when a massive crocodile, easily 25 feet long, just appears next to our yacht one afternoon while Miguel and Emma are fishing off the stern. Jim spots it first and yells a warning, and by the time I get up on deck, the thing is circling us with the kind of deliberate intent that suggests it knows exactly what we are, and what we are is food. Everyone inside, I order, because this is not a threat we can fight off with fishing gaffs and crossbows. And for 10 minutes, we all just watch through the windows as this monster circles our yacht, like it is deciding whether we are worth the effort. Then it disappears underwater, and we think maybe it is left. But suddenly there is a massive impact on the hull that makes the whole yacht shudder, and everyone stumbles. It is trying to sink us, Harrison says with the kind of calm certainty that comes from military experience, and he is right because another impact hits us from below. And I realize this thing is ramming the yacht, trying to breach the hull, or at least damage us enough that we are helpless. Engines. I tell Linda, who is closest to the controls. Full power, we need to move. The engines roar to life, and we start moving, and the crocodile tries to follow, but even with its enhanced speed, it cannot keep pace with the motor yacht at full throttle. So eventually it gives up and heads back toward shore, where presumably it has easier prey to hunt. We have got dents in the hull, significant ones. But the steel reinforcement I installed held up enough that we are not taking on water. Which means my paranoid preparation just saved our lives again. That was close, Derek says, with what might actually be the first moment of genuine gratitude I have seen from him. If you hadn't reinforced the hull before all this started, we would be sinking right now. Yeah, I agree. Because what else is there to say? I am exhausted from the adrenaline crash, and my hands are shaking, and I keep thinking about how close we came to disaster. But we made it, and that is what counts. That night we have a serious conversation about whether staying anywhere near shore makes sense anymore. Because if the mutant animals can swim out to reach us, then 5 miles isn't far enough, and maybe we need to be thinking about 50 miles or 100 miles, or just getting so far into the ocean that nothing can possibly reach us. The problem is that deep ocean fishing is completely different from coastal fishing, and Miguel admits he has never worked waters that deep before. Doesn't know if his techniques will translate, doesn't know if we will be able to catch enough fish to sustain everyone. We will adapt, Linda says with more confidence than I think she actually feels. That is what we have been doing this whole time, adapting to new threats and new challenges. We can learn deep ocean fishing if we have to. What about the yacht? Emma asks. Is it going to hold up that far out? The waves are bigger. The weather's worse. What if something breaks? Then I fix it, I tell her. Even though I am not entirely sure that is true, because some things cannot be fixed with spare parts and determination. Some things require proper facilities and specialized equipment we just don't have anymore. We will make it work. The decision to head 50 miles offshore is unanimous this time, because even Derek's family can see that staying close to shore with mutant predators actively hunting us is a death sentence. And the next morning we start the journey out into deeper water. The fuel gauge drops at a rate that makes me nervous, but there is no turning back now. And by afternoon we are far enough out that I cannot see shore anymore. Even with binoculars, just ocean in every direction. This is it, Jim says, standing next to me at the helm while I navigate. This is really it. We are all in now, no going back to shore for supplies. No rescue attempts, just us and whatever we can make work out here. Yeah, I agree. Feeling the weight of that decision settle over me like a blanket. Hope I made the right call. You have been making the right calls for 4 months now, he points out. No reason to doubt yourself at this point. Month 4 passes into month 5, and we are learning what deep ocean survival really means, which is that everything is harder and less predictable than we thought. Miguel struggles at first with the fishing, because techniques that worked in coastal waters don't translate to the open ocean, and our catches drop dramatically to maybe 10 pounds a day, which isn't nearly enough for 11 people. We start rationing the stored food more strictly, cutting meal sizes, trying to make everything stretch further, while Miguel experiments with different fishing methods. Sophie gets seasick from the bigger waves and spends 2 days just lying in her bunk feeling miserable. And I hate seeing my kids suffer. But there is literally nothing I can do about it except wait for her to adapt. Emma handles the motion better, but she is getting cabin fever in ways that worry me, spending hours just staring at the horizon like she is looking for something that isn't there. And when I try to talk to her about it, she just says she misses her friends and her old life. And how is she supposed to adapt to a world where everything she knew is gone? By surviving, I tell her, though I know it is not enough. By being here, being alive, having a chance at a future even if it is not the future you planned. That is not a good enough answer, Dad, she says. And she is right, but I don't have a better one. The breakthrough with fishing comes in week 6 when Miguel tries going deeper with his lines, using heavier weights and different bait. And suddenly he is catching 40-pound tuna and mahi-mahi, that are exactly what we need for sustainable protein. He is ecstatic, teaching everyone his new technique, and within days our food situation goes from desperate to merely tight, which is about as good as we can hope for out here. I told you I figure it out, Miguel says with justified pride while we are cleaning his latest catch. Deep ocean is different, yes. But fish are fish, and I know fish. The chickens continue laying reliably, which feels like a small miracle. 8 eggs a day from our remaining hens. And the garden produces a steady stream of lettuce and herbs that make every meal feel slightly more civilized. Tyler, who has been mostly quiet since the evacuation, starts helping Sophie with the chickens. And suddenly he is talking more, asking questions about how things work. And I realize this 8-year-old is processing trauma the only way kids know how, by finding routine and purpose in small tasks. Month 6 brings a different kind of challenge when we start noticing the sky changing in ways that shouldn't be possible but definitely are. That is not normal, Sarah says one morning, pointing at clouds that have a yellowish-green tint to them. That color means atmospheric contamination, probably from industrial accidents and nuclear plant meltdowns, releasing chemicals that are mixing in the upper atmosphere and falling back down as precipitation. As what? Derek asks, because I guess he doesn't know what precipitation means. Rain, Linda clarifies. She is saying the rain is going to be contaminated. How contaminated, I ask, though I am not sure I want to know. Potentially very, Sarah admits. Sulfuric acid, nitric acid, various chemical compounds from burning industrial facilities. Everything that has been going into the air for 6 months has to come back down eventually, and when it does, it is going to be corrosive and toxic. So acid rain, Harrison summarizes. Like the environmental disaster scenarios we used to worry about back in the 80s. Except this time, it is actually happening. We start preparing immediately. Because if acid rain is coming, then we need protection for ourselves and the yacht, and I spend 3 days building a retractable canopy that can cover the main deck while still allowing us to move around when we need to. The garden gets its own protective covering made from clear plastic sheeting that lets light through but keeps rain off. And the chickens get moved permanently below deck to the engine room where they are safe, but definitely not happy about the change in accommodations. The first acid rain hits on week 24. And we know it is coming because the sky turns that sickly yellow-green color, and the air smells wrong, like sulfur and something chemical that makes my nose burn. Everyone below deck, I order, seal all hatches. If you need to be outside, you wear full rubber protective gear. No exposed skin. No shortcuts. The rain, when it starts, is immediate and violent in its effects. And I watch through a window as metal railings begin to steam and corrode. Paint bubbling and dissolving. Rubber seals softening and starting to melt. Jim's outside for maybe 30 seconds to secure something he forgot. And even through his protective suit he gets burned, his hand catching spray that eats through the rubber and leaves blistering chemical burns on his skin that make him scream. Jesus Christ, Derek mutters as we pull Jim inside, and Sarah starts treating the burns. That is going to happen every time it rains now. Potentially, Sarah says while she is bandaging Jim's hand. The atmospheric contamination isn't going to clear for years, maybe decades. So yes, we should assume all rainfall is hazardous until proven otherwise. We adapt because that is what we have been doing for 6 months now, developing warning systems based on sky color and smell that give us maybe 20 minutes notice before the acid rain hits. And everyone learns to recognize the signs. We install zinc-based protective coatings on exposed metal that act as sacrificial layers, corroding instead of the hull. And we have to reapply them after every rain, which is exhausting work but necessary. Water collection becomes more complicated too, because we can only gather rain before it becomes acidic, and afterward we have to filter it through charcoal and other materials to make it drinkable. This is unsustainable, Derek says after the 3rd acid rain event in 10 days. We are barely keeping ahead of the corrosion, and sooner or later something critical is going to fail and we will not be able to fix it. Then we fix what we can and adapt to what we cannot. I tell him, because giving up isn't an option, and I need him to understand that. We have survived zombies, mutant animals, and now acid rain. We are going to keep surviving whatever else comes our way. By month 7, we have developed routines for acid rain that make it manageable if not pleasant, and the yacht is holding together through constant maintenance and jury-rigged repairs that would make any proper marine engineer cry but keep us functional. The mutant animal situation on shore has evolved in ways that are both relieving and terrifying, because the infected population appears to be declining as the enhanced predators hunt them to near extinction, which means the original zombie threat is essentially over. But now we have to worry about super-intelligent lions and bears and gorillas that control the ruins of every major city. Sarah spends hours observing the shore through our telescope, and she has documented some disturbing developments, like gorillas using tools to build what look like shelters, and bears coordinating hunting strategies that suggest they are communicating in ways normal bears shouldn't be capable of, and the lion pride establishing clear territorial boundaries that they defend aggressively against other predators. They are forming societies, she explains to anyone who will listen, rudimentary ones, but definitely complex social structures that go beyond normal animal behavior. The virus enhanced their intelligence, and now they are using it. Will they ever come out to sea? Sophie asks. And honestly, I am wondering the same thing, because if these animals keep evolving, who knows what they might become capable of? Probably not, Sarah says, though her tone suggests she is less certain than she would like to be. Most mammals aren't naturally adapted for ocean survival. And even with viral enhancements, there are biological limits to how far they can push that. We should be safe out here. That should be worries me for weeks afterward. But there is nothing we can do about uncertainties, except prepare for what we can control and hope that is enough. So that is what we do. We keep fishing, keep maintaining the yacht, keep collecting eggs and harvesting the garden, and living our strange new life 50 miles from shore, where the ocean is our sanctuary, and the sky tries to kill us every few days with corrosive rain. Month 7, week 4 brings our first real discussion about whether Derek should continue being part of our survival crew, because he has been making comments about leadership and decision-making that suggest he thinks he should be running things instead of me. I am not saying you have done a bad job, he tells me one evening when most people are below deck. I am just saying that maybe it is time to think about more democratic leadership, where everyone has input on major decisions instead of you making all the calls. This is a yacht, not a democracy, I tell him flatly. Someone needs to be captain. Someone needs to have final authority when quick decisions matter. And that someone is me, because I am the marine engineer who built this whole setup and knows how everything works. But you are making mistakes, he pushes. The engine maintenance last week, you didn't catch the fuel line corrosion until it was almost critical. If I hadn't noticed it during my watch, we could have had a major problem. He is not wrong about that, which makes this conversation even more frustrating. Because yes, I missed something. And yes, it could have been serious. And yes, having more eyes on problems is valuable. Fine, I say after a long pause. You want more input. You can be assistant engineer. You check my work, point out things I miss, help with maintenance. But I am still captain and final decisions are still mine. That is not really what I was suggesting. That is what is on offer, I interrupt. Take it or shut up about leadership. Derek's face goes through several expressions before settling on resentful acceptance. Fine, I will take it. Good. Report to the engine room tomorrow. At 0600 and I will show you what needs checking. That night, I lie awake, wondering if I am being too harsh on Derek, if maybe he has legitimate points about my leadership being less than perfect. But then I remember that 3 months ago he was trapped in an apartment building calling me for help. And I risked my life to save his family, so maybe he should be grateful instead of critical. Linda's asleep next to me, but I know she heard the whole conversation, because these walls are thin and privacy is a myth on a yacht this size. You handled that well, she whispers in the darkness. Gave him responsibility without giving up authority. Think he will actually help? Or is this just going to be more complaining in a different form? He will help. Derek's a lot of things, but he is not stupid. He knows we need to work together to survive out here. And I think having actual tasks will be good for him. He has been feeling useless, and useless makes him critical. She is probably right. And over the next few weeks, Derek does actually start pulling his weight more. Doing the detailed maintenance checks I sometimes skip because I am tired or overconfident, and I will admit, even if only to myself, that having his help makes the yacht run smoother. We are not friends and probably never will be, but we are family, and we are surviving together. And that is going to have to be enough. Month 8 hits us with a new challenge that makes everything else seem manageable in comparison. Because the acid rain events start happening more frequently. Instead of every few days, it is now every day or every other day. And the corrosion is accumulating faster than we can keep up with repairs. Solar panels are down to 60% efficiency because the protective coatings cannot keep up with the chemical assault. Some rubber seals have failed completely and need replacing with materials we don't have. And the hull protection is wearing away faster than I can reapply it. We are losing the battle against entropy, I tell Jim one afternoon while we are doing another round of zinc coating application. Every system is degrading. And at some point something critical is going to fail catastrophically. And I don't know if I will be able to fix it. Then we fix what we can and prepare for the rest. Jim says with the kind of stoic acceptance that comes from decades of military service. Been in worse situations with worse equipment and somehow made it through. We will make it through this too. I want to believe him, but I am struggling with the weight of responsibility because 11 people are depending on me to keep this yacht functional. And I am watching it slowly fall apart around us despite everything I am doing. Linda notices my stress and tries to help by taking over more of the daily management, giving me time to focus on engineering problems. But there are only so many hours in the day, and only so much one person can do. The breaking point comes in week 32 when we discover major engine problems, fuel lines corroded by acid rain exposure. Several connections weakened to the point of failure, and the whole system is basically held together with temporary patches that will not last much longer. This is bad, I tell Derek, who is helping me inspect the damage. Really bad. If these lines fail completely, we lose propulsion, and without engines we are just drifting. Can you fix it? He asks. And for once there is no criticism in his tone, just genuine concern. I can patch it again. But we are running out of materials, and eventually I am going to run out of solutions. I admit, we need proper replacement parts, marine-grade fuel lines, materials we cannot make ourselves. And I don't know where we get those in the middle of the ocean, sure. Derek says quietly, we have to go back to shore, risk an expedition to find what we need. The thought of going back to shore with mutant animals everywhere makes my skin crawl. But he is right, there is no other option if we want to keep the yacht functional long term. We'd need a small team, I think out loud. Fast Mobile knows exactly what we are looking for. In and out before the animals notice us. I will go, Derek offers. Which surprises me until I realize he is trying to prove himself. Trying to make up for months of being critical by volunteering for the most dangerous mission we have attempted. I know I have been difficult, but I want to help. Really help. Let me do this. Jim volunteers too, of course, because he has never met a dangerous situation he wouldn't throw himself into. And Miguel offers to come as backup, even though fishing is really his specialty and shore expeditions are terrifying. We plan it carefully. Fast motorboat to shore. Hit an electronics store or marine supply place. Grab what we need. get out before anything notices us, and the night before we are supposed to go, I barely sleep, because I keep imagining everything that could go wrong. Come back. Linda tells me the next morning while we are preparing to leave. That is the only rule. Whatever happens, you come back. I will, I promise. And kiss her like it might be the last time, because honestly, it might be. The shore when we reach it looks different from the last time we were here. Less chaotic but more alien. Because the mutant animals have clearly taken over completely and turned the ruins of Seattle into their territory. We beach the motorboat in a section that looks relatively clear and move inland cautiously with weapons ready. And for the first few minutes everything is eerily quiet. Too quiet, Jim points out. Because quiet means predators nearby who don't want prey to hear them coming. And we move faster toward what used to be a marine supply store 3 blocks from the waterfront. The store is half collapsed but accessible. And we find most of what we need: replacement fuel lines, electrical components, spare parts that I have been desperately needing for months, and we are loading everything into bags when we hear it. Roaring. Multiple sources. Getting closer. Go, Jim says. Run now. We sprint back toward the beach with our bags of supplies. And I glance back once and immediately regret it because there are lions. 8 massive lions running after us with terrifying speed. Miguel's fastest and he reaches the motorboat first. Jim and I are right behind him, and Derek's last because he is carrying the heaviest bag. But he is keeping up, and we might actually make it the first week passes in this weird haze where we are all trying to adjust to the new reality. And it is Sophie who adapts fastest because kids are resilient in ways adults forget to be. She has taken over the chickens completely, checking on them every morning and evening, like they are her personal responsibility. And she has even named all 10 of them, with increasingly ridiculous names that make me laugh despite everything: Henrietta, Cluck Norris, Amelia Eggart, Attila the Hen, Yoko Ono, and 5 others I can never remember. Emma's having a harder time with the transition, spending most of her days in her cabin staring at her phone even though there is no service anymore. And all she can do is look at old photos of friends who might be dead now. But I don't push her because grief takes different forms and she needs to process this in her own way. Derek and Rachel are trying to make themselves useful, though there is this tension between us that hasn't really resolved because I am still angry about the 3 months of mockery, and they are still dealing with the guilt of almost getting their son killed by not evacuating sooner. Tyler's the innocent one in all this, an 8-year-old who doesn't fully understand what has happened, except that the world got scary, and now they live on a boat with his cousin Sophie, who lets him help with the chickens. And honestly, watching those 2 kids find joy in collecting eggs while the world burns in the background is simultaneously heartbreaking and beautiful. In a way I cannot quite explain. Jim's become my right hand in a way I didn't expect. And we fall into this routine where mornings are for maintenance checks: engines, solar panels, desalination system, hull integrity, and he knows boats well enough that he catches problems before they become serious. You have got a leak forming in the forward bilge, he mentions one morning while we are doing rounds, pointing to a wet spot I hadn't noticed. Not critical yet, but we should patch it before it gets worse. And while we are at it, we should probably check all the through hull fittings, because if this one's going, others might be too. How would you spot that? I ask, because I have been over this yacht 100 times and missed it completely. 40 years on submarines, he says with a shrug. You learn to notice water where it shouldn't be, because on a submarine that kind of thing kills you real fast. And even though we are not underwater, I have still got the instinct. We spend the afternoon checking every fitting. And he is right, 3 more are showing signs of wear that would have become serious problems in another month or 2. And I am grateful for his experience, because I am a marine engineer, but most of my work has been on offshore platforms, not boats. And there is a difference between theoretical knowledge and practical experience. Linda notices us working together and pulls me aside later. I am glad Jim's here, she says quietly. You need someone who knows what they are doing, and he clearly does. And I know I was skeptical about taking on strangers, but he has proven himself. He has, I agree. And honestly, I am not sure we would make it without him. Because there is so much I don't know about day-to-day yacht operations that his Navy background fills in. Week 2 brings our first real crisis when Emma announces she wants to go back to shore just for an hour to check on her friends. And I can see this argument coming from a mile away. But that doesn't make it any easier. Absolutely not. I tell her when she brings it up at dinner. Shore is overrun with infected, and we have no way of knowing if your friends evacuated or not. So going back is just suicide with extra steps. But Dad, I just want to check, she starts. And there is this desperate pleading in her voice that breaks my heart, because she is 16 and her entire social world just collapsed. And she needs closure. Check what? I interrupt, probably more harshly than I should. Their Facebook status. There is no internet, Emma. No power, no phones that work anymore, and if your friends survived, they either evacuated like we did or they are hiding somewhere we cannot reach them. But going to shore to look for them just means you die too. You don't know that. Her voice rises and I can see tears starting. Maybe they are fine. Maybe their families had plans too. And I just want to know if anyone made it, because I cannot just sit on this boat and not know what happened to people I care about. Linda tries to mediate because that is what she does. Emma, sweetie, your father's right that it is too dangerous. But maybe we could try the radio and see if anyone's broadcasting. She looks at me. We have that ham radio system you installed, right? Could we try reaching out to other survivors and maybe get information that way? It is a good compromise, actually. And I should have thought of it myself. Yeah, we can try that. I tell Emma. The radio has decent range, and if there are other survivors out there broadcasting, we might be able to make contact. But you need to understand that we might not hear anything. And that doesn't mean your friends are dead, it just means we cannot reach them. We spend the next hour scanning frequencies, and at first it is just static and the occasional automated emergency broadcast that is still looping from some government server somewhere. But then we catch something, a man's voice, distorted but understandable, saying, "Anyone out there? This is the Cascade Falls Survivor Group. We have secured the high school, and we are taking in refugees if you can reach us safely. Bring supplies if you have them. We have got shelter and some food, but..." And then the signal cuts out. Emma's face lights up with hope because Cascade Falls is where some of her friends lived. But I am already shaking my head because I know what she is thinking. We are not going there, I say before she can ask. Cascade Falls is 40 miles inland, and there is no way to get there safely. And even if we could, the place is probably overrun by now, since that broadcast was probably recorded days ago. But they said they are taking refugees, Emma. Think about it logically, Jim interrupts, and his voice has that military authority that makes people listen. A high school in the middle of an outbreak zone is not going to stay secure for long, because eventually supplies run out, and people get desperate and security breaks down. And even if it is still standing now, it will not be in a week or a month. So going there is just delaying the inevitable. She storms off to her cabin, and Sophie follows her because the two of them have gotten closer over the last week. And I hear them talking in low voices through the door but cannot make out the words. Linda touches my arm. She will come around, she says. She just needs time to grieve. I hope you are right. I tell her, because if she tries to go ashore on her own, I don't know what I will do, and I cannot watch her every second of every day to make sure she doesn't do something stupid. That night I wake up at 2 a.m. to use the bathroom and notice the dinghy is missing from its davits, and my heart drops into my stomach because I know immediately what happened. "Jim," I yell, not caring who I wake up. Emma took the dinghy, Everyone scrambles awake, and Linda's face goes white when she realizes her daughter is gone. "Oh God, no. Please tell me she didn't." "She left a note," Sophie says quietly, holding up a piece of paper. "I found it on her bunk. She said she is just going to check on Madison. That is her best friend, and she will be back in an hour, and we shouldn't worry." "Shouldn't worry," I repeat, and I can hear the hysteria creeping into my voice. She went to shore in the middle of the night where there are thousands of infected, and she thinks we shouldn't worry. I am already pulling on clothes and grabbing weapons. "Jim, you are with me, Linda. You stay here with Sophie and Derek's family. And if we are not back in 3 hours, you leave. We are not leaving you." Linda says firmly, "Yes, you are. Because Sophie needs at least one parent alive. And I am not letting my daughter die alone on that shore." I turn to Jim. "You don't have to come with me for this. This is my kid, my responsibility, not yours." "Shut up and get in the boat," Jim says, already loading the other dinghy with weapons and supplies. "Your daughter's an idiot. But she is our idiot now. And besides, you will need backup because you are a marine engineer, not a soldier. And you will get yourself killed trying to do this alone." We motor toward shore, and the city looks even worse than it did 3 days ago when we evacuated Derek's family. Because now most of the buildings are burned out shells and the infected have spread to cover every street we can see. Jim's using night vision goggles he pulled from his seemingly infinite supply of military equipment. And he is directing me toward the beach where Emma probably landed. "There is the dinghy," he says, pointing to a small craft pulled up on the sand. "She has been gone maybe 3 hours based on the tide marks, and those tracks lead toward Capitol Hill, which is probably where her friend lived." 3 hours is way too long, I say, feeling panic rising. Anything could have happened in 3 hours. "Then we better move fast," Jim says, and we are running up the beach toward the streets where infected are shambling around but haven't noticed us yet. "Where did her friend live?" "Madison something. I think Linda mentioned the address once. I am trying to remember. And then it comes to me. Her mom's a real estate agent like Linda, and they work together on some deals. And I think Madison lived on 15th Avenue near the volunteer park." We move through the streets as quietly as possible, and Jim's military training shows, because he knows how to move in a way that doesn't attract attention, staying in shadows and avoiding direct lines of sight with infected. I am following his lead and trying not to make noise. But it is hard when every instinct is screaming at me to run toward where Emma might be. We pass bodies in the street, some fresh, some days old, all of them testament to how fast everything fell apart. And I try not to look too closely because seeing the details will just make this worse. "There," Jim whispers, pointing to a house with lights in the upstairs window, which is insane because who has lights when the power grid collapsed 3 days ago? "Battery lanterns, maybe. And look at the door, it is barricaded from the inside, which means someone's alive in there." We approach carefully, and I knock on the door as quietly as I can while still being loud enough to be heard inside. "Emma, Emma, if you are in there, open up. It is Dad." There is movement inside, and then I hear footsteps and the door cracks open and Emma's face appears, streaked with tears and dirt. "Dad," she says, and she sounds so young and scared that all my anger evaporates instantly. "I am sorry, I just had to know. I had to see if Madison, is she alive?" I ask, already knowing the answer from Emma's expression. Emma shakes her head. "She is upstairs. She turned. Her parents tried to chain her up, tried to keep her from hurting anyone. But they are dead too, and it is just her up there. And I couldn't do anything." I pull Emma into a hug and she is shaking. "Okay, we need to go right now, because there are infected everywhere. And we were lucky to get here without being seen. But our luck will not hold." I look at Jim. "Can we make it back the way we came?" He checks the street with his night vision. "Negative. There is at least 30 infected between here and the beach now. and they are spreading out in a search pattern like they are looking for something. Probably us, based on the timing. Back door, I suggest, and Emma nods. There is an alley out back, but there were infected there too when I came in, and I had to hide in a dumpster for like 20 minutes until they moved on. We check the back door and the alley is clear for the moment. So we slip out and start moving toward the beach, using a different route that takes us through residential streets instead of main roads. It is slower, and we have to backtrack twice when we encounter groups of infected we cannot avoid. But eventually we make it to the waterfront, and I can see the dinghy still where we left it. Jim's checking our 6 with the night vision when he suddenly freezes. Contact, multiple. Moving fast toward our position. How many? I ask. Already pulling Emma toward the dinghy. At least 20, maybe more. And they are running, which means they saw us or heard us or something attracted them. He pulls out what I am starting to realize might be his actual last grenade. Get in the boat and start the engine. I will hold them off. We are not leaving you behind, I say. But he is already moving toward the infected with his grenade ready. Get your daughter safe. That is an order. He yells it with enough military authority that I find myself obeying, pulling Emma into the dinghy and starting the engine while Jim throws the grenade into the middle of the infected horde. The explosion is massive and takes out most of them, and Jim's running toward us while the survivors recover, and he makes it to the boat just as I am pulling away and literally dives in as we are accelerating. We make it back to the yacht and Linda's crying and hugging Emma, while simultaneously yelling at her for being so stupid, and I am too exhausted to do anything except collapse on the deck and try to process that we just survived that. Jim sits down next to me, breathing hard. Your daughter's grounded, he says, between gasps. Forever. I agree, until she is 30 at least. Emma comes over after Linda's done yelling at her, and she sits down in front of me with tears in her eyes. I am sorry, Dad. I was stupid. I could have gotten you and Jim killed. And I know that now. And I will not ever do anything like that again. Good, I tell her. Because I cannot lose you too. And if you die trying to find closure for your friends, then Rachel's death meant nothing. Because I am supposed to be keeping you safe. And I cannot do that if you are running off to zombie-infested cities in the middle of the night. She nods and hugs me, and I hold her tight because she is alive. And that is what matters, even if my heart is still racing from the terror of thinking I might lose her. Later that night, she finds me on deck where I am on watch, and she sits down next to me. Dad, thank you for coming after me. And I get it now why we cannot go back to shore, why we have to stay on the yacht. I saw what it is like out there. And Madison's parents tried to save her, and they died anyway. And I understand, now that some things cannot be fixed. I am glad you understand. I tell her, though I wish you would understood it without having to risk your life to learn the lesson. Me too, she says quietly, and we sit together watching the dark coastline where fires still burn and Seattle continues its collapse. The next few weeks settle into something resembling routine. And it is amazing how fast humans adapt to new circumstances when we have to. Mornings start with system checks. Jim and I go through the yacht top to bottom looking for problems before they become critical, and then breakfast where everyone gathers in the salon, and we plan the day. Sophie's in charge of the chickens and she takes it seriously, collecting eggs and cleaning the coop, and even talking to the birds like they are her friends. Emma's learning to fish with Jim's help, and I can see her slowly coming back to herself as she finds purpose in contributing to our survival. Derek and Rachel are handling cooking and cleaning, which doesn't require a lot of skill but does need to be done and gives them a way to contribute without getting in the way of the technical work. Week 3 brings our first real addition to the crew when Jim spots something while doing his morning scan of the horizon. Captain, we have got a contact. He calls down from the observation deck, where he has set up a watch station with binoculars and a comfortable chair he salvaged from below. Lifeboat. Maybe 2 miles out. Looks like there is someone in it. I come up with my own binoculars. And sure enough, there is a small lifeboat drifting and someone inside who is not moving much, which either means they are dead or close to it. Could be infected, I say, which is always the first concern now. Could be a survivor who needs help, Jim counters. And from what I can see through the scope, they are alone and haven't moved in the last 5 minutes. So either they are dead already or they are too weak to be a threat. We debate it for a few minutes, but eventually curiosity and basic human decency win out over caution. So we motor over to the lifeboat carefully and approach from downwind so we can get close without exposing ourselves. The person in the boat is an older man, maybe 65. Hard to tell with the sunburn and dehydration, and he is barely conscious. Jim leans over with a boat hook to check if he is infected, and the man stirs at the touch and looks up at us with eyes that are clear and aware. Not the clouded, dead stare of the infected. Help, he rasps, and his voice is so hoarse I can barely hear it. Please. We pull him aboard and Jim gets him water while Linda wraps him in a blanket. And it takes a few minutes before he is coherent enough to tell us his story. His name is Captain Harrison. Everyone called him Harry, and he was on a cruise ship when the outbreak hit. One of those massive vessels with 3,000 passengers who all thought they were on vacation. Started with one passenger, he says, between sips of water, woman from California. She got sick, bit a crew member, and within 6 hours half the ship was infected, and people were panicking and jumping overboard, and the crew was trying to contain it. But you cannot contain something like that in a confined space. How many survived? Linda asks. Harrison's face goes dark. Maybe 50 people made it to lifeboats. I was one of the lucky ones. Military training kicked in and I grabbed supplies and launched before the chaos got completely out of control. But I watched people fighting over life jackets and infected attacking everyone, and the ship starting to list because half the crew was dead and nobody was manning the controls. He takes another sip of water. Been drifting for about a week, I think. Lost track of days. Thought I was going to die out here. You are safe now, I tell him. And it feels good to say that. Feels good to save someone instead of just surviving. We have got room, got food and water, and we are set up for long-term survival, so you are welcome to stay as long as you need. What is your background? Jim asks, and I can tell he is already evaluating whether Harrison will be useful or dead weight. Navy. 43 years. Retired 2 years ago, Harrison says. And Jim's expression shifts to respect immediately because Navy guys recognize each other. Carrier operations mostly, then finished up with logistics and navigation training for new officers. I know boats, know tactics, know how to organize a crew for extended operations. You are hired, I say, because someone with that kind of experience is exactly what we need. And Harrison manages a weak smile. Didn't realize I was applying for a job. Every survivor has a job now, I tell him. It is how we make this work. Everyone contributes what they can, and we all benefit from the collective effort. Over the next few weeks, Harrison recovers his strength and proves himself invaluable. And it turns out his navigation skills are significantly better than mine because he knows how to read charts and plot courses and predict weather patterns using just basic observations. He starts training Emma on navigation because she is interested and sharp and needs something productive to focus on. And I watch them working together over charts and realize this is what survival looks like: people with different skills coming together and teaching the next generation. Month 2 brings another survivor when Sarah Chen shows up, though her rescue is more dramatic than Harrison's was. Jim spots her through the binoculars clinging to a research buoy about 5 miles offshore, and she has been there for 3 weeks apparently, surviving on emergency rations and rainwater collection, while watching the world fall apart around her. I am a marine biologist, she explains, once we have pulled her aboard and gotten her warm and fed. Was studying ocean currents and fish migration patterns When the outbreak hit and our research vessel got overrun by infected crew who had been ashore for supplies, and I barely made it to the emergency raft before the ship sank. 3 weeks on a buoy, Linda says with amazement. How did you survive that long? The buoy had emergency supplies, food for 2 weeks, water purification tablets, solar panels for charging electronics. Sarah explains. I rationed carefully and collected rainwater and just tried not to think about how I was probably going to die out here. But I have been observing the water and something strange is happening. That gets my attention. Strange how? The zombie corpses, she says, pulling out a waterproof notebook where she has been recording observations. There are hundreds of them floating in the water, people who died on shore and got washed out to sea or fell off boats or whatever, and the sharks are eating them. Which makes sense because sharks are opportunistic feeders, but the sharks are acting differently. Differently how? Jim asks, leaning forward with interest. More aggressive, larger than normal, and they are grouping together, which great whites don't typically do because they are solitary hunters. She flips through her notes. I have observed pods of 3 and 4 sharks hunting together with clear coordination, which suggests enhanced intelligence or at least modified behavior patterns. And some of the sharks I have seen are significantly larger than the normal size range for their species. You think the virus is affecting them? I ask. And the implications of that are terrifying because we are surrounded by ocean. I don't know for sure. But if the virus can jump to aquatic species and affect their biology the way it affects humans, she trails off. But we all understand the implication. I need more data. Need to observe more. But yes, I think we might be seeing mutation in marine life. The idea that zombies might evolve into something worse hadn't occurred to me. And I can see the same concern reflected in everyone's faces. So what do we do? Derek asks. And it is one of the few times he has contributed something useful to a conversation we watch. We collect data. We stay alert, Sarah says. And we hope I am wrong. But we prepare in case I am right. Another week passes and we rescue Miguel Santos, who we find clinging to the wreckage of his fishing boat after it capsized during a storm. He is 28, comes from a family of commercial fishermen. And within 3 days of joining us, he has tripled our daily catch because he knows techniques and locations and methods that none of us ever learned. You are using sport fishing gear for survival fishing, he explains to Jim and Emma, who have been handling our fishing operations. That works for small catches. But if you want to really feed this many people, you need commercial methods, proper nets, trawl lines, knowledge of where fish congregate based on water temperature and current patterns. Teach us, Emma, says immediately because she has found her thing and fishing has become her passion over the last few weeks. Miguel grins. Happy to. Your family saved my life. Teaching you how to fish is the least I can do. By month 3, we have established ourselves as a functioning community of 11 people, me and Linda and Emma, and Sophie, Derek and Rachel and Tyler. Jim and Harrison and Sarah and Miguel and the yacht feels less like a survival shelter and more like an actual home. We have got routines and systems, and everyone has roles they are good at, and there is this sense of accomplishment in knowing we have survived 3 months of apocalypse through preparation and cooperation, and just sheer determination not to die. But then Derek starts causing problems again because apparently 3 months of being grateful isn't enough to overcome his fundamental need to be in charge of everything. It starts subtle little comments about how we should do things differently. Suggestions that maybe we should explore more, instead of staying anchored in one spot. Questions about whether I am really the best person to be making all the decisions. Jim notices it before I do. Your brother-in-law's planning something. He tells me one evening, while we are on watch together. I have seen this before in military units. Guy who doesn't like the command structure starts undermining the co with small comments, designed to erode confidence. You think he is trying to take over? I ask. Though honestly, I am not surprised because Derek's always been the kind of person who thinks his MBA and management experience make him qualified to run everything. I think he is testing the waters, seeing who he can sway to his side, and if he gets enough support, he will make a move. Jim looks at me seriously. You need to shut it down now before it becomes a real problem. Because mutiny on a boat can get people killed real fast when coordination breaks down. I should confront Derek directly, but I don't want to create more division when we are already dealing with enough stress. So instead, I try to bring him into the decision-making process more. Give him responsibilities that make him feel valued. It backfires spectacularly when he takes the increased responsibility as validation that I am not capable of leading and starts pushing for more authority. The confrontation comes during a group meeting in month 4 when we are discussing whether to move farther offshore or stay where we are. I think we should go at least 50 miles out, Derek says. And he is using that boardroom voice he probably used in investor meetings. We are too close to shore here, and the infected could potentially reach us if they figure out how to swim. And we would be safer in deep water where there is no chance of land-based threats. 50 miles out means we use a lot of fuel getting there. I counter. And deep water means different fishing conditions that Miguel would have to learn, and we would lose the ability to observe what is happening on shore, which is valuable intelligence. Valuable intelligence about what? The infected aren't going anywhere, and watching the city burn doesn't help us survive. Derek looks around the table at everyone else. I think what we really need here is someone with actual management experience making strategic decisions. Because no offense, Silas, but being a marine engineer doesn't qualify you to lead a survival community. The room goes silent, and I can feel everyone's eyes on me waiting to see how I will respond. Linda looks uncomfortable because this is her brother challenging her husband. And Emma and Sophie look confused because they don't understand adult power dynamics yet. Jim's expression has gone cold and hard in a way that suggests he is about 2 seconds from physically throwing Derek overboard. You are right that I am not a professional manager, I say calmly, though inside I am furious. But I am the person who saw this coming 3 months before it happened. I am the person who spent every penny we had buying and preparing this yacht while you spent those same 3 months mocking me for being paranoid. I am the person who risked my life saving your family when you were trapped in an apartment building because you didn't prepare. So yes, Derek, I lack management experience. But I have something you don't have, which is a track record of making the right calls when it matters. That is not leadership. That is just luck. Derek starts. But Harrison interrupts him. No, that is preparation meeting opportunity, which is literally the definition of leadership. Harrison says in his retired officer voice that brooks no argument. I have served under hundreds of officers in my career, and the best ones weren't the ones with the fanciest credentials. They were the ones who made good decisions under pressure and earned the trust of their crew through demonstrated competence. Silas has done that. You haven't. Derek's face goes red. This is ridiculous. We should be voting on leadership, not just accepting if you want to vote. Let's vote, I interrupt, because I am tired of this. And I would rather resolve it now than let it fester. Everyone who thinks Derek should be in charge of this yacht, raise your hand. Derek raises his hand immediately, and Rachel raises hers after a moment's hesitation. And Miguel looks uncomfortable but keeps his hands down, which I take as a vote for neutrality. Everyone else, Linda, Emma, Sophie, Jim, Harrison, Sarah keeps their hands down or actively shakes their heads. Looks like you lost, I tell Derek flatly. So here is what is going to happen. You are going to accept that I am captain of this yacht, and you are going to stop undermining my authority. And you are going to contribute to this community without trying to take it over. If you cannot do that, you are welcome to take a dinghy and try your luck on shore. You cannot just kick me off, Derek sputters, but Linda interrupts him. Yes, he can. And he should if you don't stop this. She looks at her brother with disappointment. Derek, I love you, but Silas is right. You were wrong about the yacht, wrong about the preparation, wrong about the severity of the outbreak. And now you are trying to take control from the person who has kept us all alive. It needs to stop. The fact that Linda sided with me instead of her brother seems to deflate Derek's anger, and he slumps in his chair looking defeated. Fine, he mutters. You are captain. I get it. The tension doesn't completely go away after that. But Derek stops actively trying to undermine me and starts actually contributing, and by month 5 we have achieved something like genuine cooperation where everyone works together. Because we all understand that survival requires unity. Sophie's chickens are producing 8 eggs a day, which is enough for breakfast protein for everyone. Miguel's fishing brings in 40 pounds of fresh catch daily, and Sarah's garden is starting to produce vegetables that supplement our stored food supplies. We are not just surviving anymore. We are actually thriving in our own weird apocalypse way. Month 6 brings another crisis when Emma decides she wants to go back to shore again. Except this time she at least asks permission first, instead of just stealing the dinghy in the middle of the night. Dad, I know you said no before, but I really think we should at least check if there are any survivors we could help. She says at breakfast one morning, I have been listening to the radio and there are still broadcasts from people asking for help. And we have room on the yacht and supplies to share. And it seems wrong to just ignore everyone else who is struggling. It is not wrong to prioritize our own survival. I tell her, though I can hear how cold that sounds. Every time we go to shore, we risk exposure to infected, risk someone getting bitten, risk bringing danger back to the yacht. But isn't that the point? Emma counters. If we are just going to hide on the yacht and let everyone else die, then what is the point of surviving? Don't we have some responsibility to help others if we can? She is not wrong. And the fact that she is thinking about moral obligations in the middle of an apocalypse makes me proud even as it terrifies me, because moral obligations get people killed. Linda notices my hesitation. Maybe we could do a cautious scouting mission, she suggests. Not a rescue operation, just reconnaissance to see what the situation is and whether there are safe ways to help people. That is reasonable, Harrison says, and Jim nods agreement. We take a small team, armed with a strict time limit, and abort protocols. If it looks safe enough, we can consider rescue operations. But if it is too dangerous, we don't commit. So we plan a shore expedition for the next day, and the team ends up being me, Jim, Miguel, and Emma, because she is the one who pushed for this, and I figure she needs to see firsthand what we are dealing with. We approach the shore at dawn when infected are supposedly less active, though Sarah warns us that is based on zombie movie logic, and we have no actual data on real infected behavior patterns, and I am tense the entire approach, because this feels like tempting fate. The marina where we originally launched from is completely overrun, bodies everywhere, and infected shambling around. So we try a different location farther up the coast where there is a small beach. Miguel spots something through the binoculars. Smoke, he says, pointing to a building inland. Controlled smoke, like a signal fire. And their movement on the roof. People. How many? I ask. 3, maybe 4. They are waving something cloth. Maybe a shirt. They see us. We beach the dinghy and Jim and I approach carefully with weapons ready while Miguel and Emma stay with the boat in case we need to evacuate fast. The infected in this area are scattered and easy to avoid, and we make it to the building, an old apartment complex, without incident. There is a makeshift barricade at the ground floor entrance, and a voice calls down from above. Don't shoot. We are not infected. We have been trapped here for 2 weeks. Jim checks the building with his military experience and gives me the all-clear signal, so I yell back up. Come down slowly. Keep your hands visible. We are here to help, but we need to see you are not infected. 4 people descend, 2 men, 2 women, all in their 30s or 40s, all looking half-starved and desperate. One of the men starts crying when he sees us. Oh, thank God. We thought everyone was dead. We have been watching the shore for days, hoping someone would see our signal. Do any of you have medical training? I interrupt because that is our most critical shortage, or technical skills engineering, mechanical, electrical. They shake their heads, and I feel my hope deflate because, as harsh as it sounds, we need useful skills, not just extra mouths to feed. But Emma's looking at these people with compassion, and I know I cannot just leave them here to die, so I make the call. All right, you can come with us. But there are rules and everyone has to contribute. And if you cannot follow the rules or pull your weight, then you will be asked to leave. We get them back to the yacht, and Linda and Sarah help them get cleaned up and fed. And within a week, they have integrated into our community. Turns out 2 of them are actually pretty good at mechanical work, and the other 2 take over most of the cooking duties, so they are more useful than I initially thought. More importantly, Emma sees that we can help people when it is done carefully and strategically, and she stops pushing for reckless rescue missions. Month 7 is when everything changes because Sarah makes a discovery that terrifies all of us. She has been monitoring the shore with our telescope and taking detailed notes on infected behavior patterns. And one morning she calls me up to the observation deck with genuine fear in her voice. "Silas, you need to see this right now." I take the telescope and look where she is pointing. And at first I don't understand what I am seeing because my brain refuses to process it. "Is that a lion?" I ask, because there is definitely something big and cat-shaped moving through the streets. "It is a lion," Sarah confirms, "and look at the size of it. That is not normal. Great cats don't get that big outside of prehistoric times." She is right, the thing is massive. Easily 50% larger than any lion I have ever seen in a zoo. And as I watch, it moves with a predatory grace toward a group of infected, and then just annihilates them. We are talking 3 seconds and 5 zombies are dead, torn apart with a speed and violence that shouldn't be possible. "Where did it come from?" I ask. "Woodland Park Zoo, probably," Sarah says. "I forgot there is a major zoo in Seattle. And when the power failed and the staff evacuated, the animals would have escaped, and they have been surviving by eating infected corpses, because that is the only food source available. And Silas, animals eating infected flesh means the virus is entering their systems. But animals cannot become zombies," I say, "because the virus reanimates human dead, not animal dead." "No, but the virus can affect living tissue in unpredictable ways. And if it is interacting with animal biology," she looks at me seriously, "we might be seeing mutation, accelerated evolution, enhanced predatory characteristics driven by viral influence on DNA." "How bad can it get?" I ask, already dreading the answer. I don't know, but evolution usually takes millions of years. And if the virus is speeding that up, we could see significant changes in months or even weeks instead of millennia. And apex predators, with enhanced size, strength, intelligence, healing capabilities. She doesn't finish, but she doesn't need to. We watch over the next several weeks, and the mutations become more obvious and more terrifying. The lions form a pride of 8 that hunts with coordination far beyond normal lion behavior, taking down zombies with tactical efficiency. There are bears, 3 of them that we can see, that are easily twice the normal size and seem to be able to shrug off injuries that should be fatal. Gorillas appear and they are using tools, actual weapons like rocks and pipes, coordinating attacks in ways that suggest significantly enhanced intelligence. An elephant shows up and it is somehow even more terrifying than the carnivores, because it just destroys everything in its path, charging through buildings and infected hordes with unstoppable force. "The ecosystem is collapsing," Sarah says during one of our evening analysis sessions, where we review her observations. "The infected population on shore is declining rapidly because the mutant animals are hunting them down with extreme efficiency. And within another month or 2, there might not be any zombies left in the coastal areas." "That is good, right?" Sophie asks. Because she doesn't fully grasp the implications. "It would be good if the mutant animals stayed on land." Sarah explains. But some of them are showing aquatic adaptation. And if they start seeing us as potential prey, she doesn't get to finish because Jim calls down from the watch station. Contact, something in the water approaching fast. Everyone rushes on deck and we can see something swimming toward us. And as it gets closer, I realize it is a crocodile, but wrong. Way wrong. Because crocodiles don't swim in open ocean and they definitely don't grow to 25 feet long. Jim already has the harpoon gun ready. But I don't think it will be enough to stop something that size. And as the creature reaches the yacht, it slams into our hull with enough force to make the entire boat shudder. It is trying to sink us. Harrison yells from the engine room. Hull integrity is holding, but another few hits like that get the engine started. I order full power. We need to outrun this thing. Jim fires the harpoon and it hits the crocodile in the shoulder. But the creature just thrashes and the harpoon pulls free because these things apparently have armor-plated skin now. The engines roar to life, and we start moving, and the crocodile tries to keep up, but we are faster. And after a few hundred yards, it gives up and turns back toward shore. Sarah's taking notes frantically. Did you see how fast it was swimming? Normal crocodiles cannot maintain that speed, and the way it attacked the yacht showed problem-solving intelligence far beyond reptile baseline behavior. Translation for those of us who aren't marine biologists, Derek asks. Translation. We are not just dealing with bigger animals. We are dealing with smarter, faster, more dangerous animals that are actively hunting, Sarah says. And we need to get farther offshore before they figure out how to swim longer distances. That night, we hold an emergency meeting and the debate is intense. Because moving farther offshore means using precious fuel and fishing in deeper waters with different techniques, and losing our ability to observe what is happening on land. Derek, ironically, is actually on my side for once, arguing that safety trumps convenience, while Harrison points out that deep ocean navigation requires different skills, and we will need to rely more heavily on his expertise. Eventually, we vote and decide to move 50 miles offshore, far enough that no land animal could reasonably swim that distance, even with viral enhancement. The move takes a full day and uses up about a quarter of our remaining fuel reserves, which makes me nervous, but Sarah's right that staying close to shore is becoming too dangerous. The deep ocean is different, darker, colder, waves are bigger, and there is this sense of isolation that is more profound than anything we have experienced before. Sophie stands at the rail looking at the horizon where there is nothing but water in every direction. Dad, are we lost? She asks. No, baby. GPS still works so we know exactly where we are. I tell her. We are just farther from land than we were before. What if the animals learn to swim this far? It is the question we are all thinking about, but nobody wants to voice. Then we will move farther, I say, hoping it is true. There is always somewhere we can go to stay safe. Miguel's struggling with the different fishing conditions, but he is adapting, learning new techniques, and by week 2 at our new location we are catching enough to survive. Though not as much as we were getting closer to shore. The garden's still producing, the chickens are still laying, and our stored supplies are being rationed carefully. So we are making it work. Month 8 brings a new threat that we didn't see coming. Though maybe we should have. The sky starts turning this sickly yellow-green color, and there is a smell in the air like sulfur. And Sarah goes pale when she sees it. Oh no, she says. Oh no, this is bad. What is it? I ask. Atmospheric contamination. All the nuclear plants that melted down when nobody was maintaining them. All the chemical factories that exploded. All the massive fires burning unchecked for months. It is all going into the atmosphere and coming back down as acid rain. How bad, Jim asks. pH probably 2 or lower. Strong enough to corrode metal and burn skin on contact. Sarah says, we need to get everyone inside right now and seal everything. We scramble to button up the yacht, closing all hatches and ports. And the rain starts maybe 5 minutes later. I watch through a window as the first drops hit the deck and they actually sizzle. And the metal railings start showing rust almost immediately. Jim was outside when the rain started and didn't make it inside fast enough. He got maybe 10 seconds of exposure on his arm, and the skin is already blistering red. "Son of a bitch," he yells as Sarah treats the burn with water from our fresh supply. That is worse than I expected. The rain lasts 2 hours, and when it stops, we go outside to assess damage. Paint is gone. Rubber seals are melting. One of our solar panels has pitting marks all over it. And the chicken coop got destroyed so badly we have to move the birds below deck permanently. Jim's arm is bandaged but will heal, though he will have scars. This is going to be a regular thing now, isn't it? Linda asks. Probably, Sarah confirms. The atmospheric contamination is going to persist for years, and we will need to adapt to acid rain happening every few days. So we adapt because that is what we do. We install a retractable canopy over the deck, set up a better warning system to detect when acid rain is coming based on sky color and smell. Get heavy rubber suits for anyone who needs to be outside during rain, and modify our water collection system to only gather rain before it becomes acidic. The chickens hate being below deck, but they adjust. And we build a new coop in the engine room that is not ideal but keeps them safe. Month 9 is when Derek's second attempt at undermining my authority happens. And this time he is smarter about it because he waits for a legitimate crisis, instead of just pushing for power out of ego. The acid rain has been corroding our systems faster than we can repair them. And one morning the engines will not start because a fuel line has corroded through and is leaking diesel everywhere. I spend 6 hours trying to fix it with our limited supplies, and eventually I get it working. But it is a temporary patch that might last a week or might last a month. Derek seizes on this during the evening meal. "Silas, I think we need to talk about contingency planning," he says in his reasonable business voice that I have learned to distrust. The yacht's falling apart faster than we can repair it, and we are one major malfunction away from being stranded in the middle of the ocean. I am aware of the situation, I say tersely. Are you? Because from where I am sitting, it looks like you are doing reactive maintenance instead of proactive planning. And that is how people die. He looks around the table. I am not trying to start another fight. I am genuinely concerned that we need someone with management experience to help organize our resources better and plan for multiple failure scenarios. Rachel backs him up, which surprises nobody. Derek has a point about needing better organization. Maybe if we had clear hierarchies and responsibility chains, we could be more efficient. We have clear hierarchies, Harrison says before I can respond. Silas is captain. Jim and I handle security and tactical planning. Sarah handles scientific observation and medical issues. Miguel handles fishing and food procurement. And everyone else has their roles. What exactly do you think is unclear? I think there is a lack of strategic planning. Derek starts, but Linda interrupts him. Derek, stop. Just stop. We have been over this. Silas is captain because he prepared for this when nobody else did. And he has kept us alive for 9 months. And your management experience from before the apocalypse doesn't translate to survival situations. But Linda, I am serious. You need to drop this or I am going to side with Silas in kicking you off the yacht. And I don't want to do that because you are my brother. But I will if you force me to choose between my brother and my husband. That shuts Derek down pretty effectively, though I can see the resentment still burning in his eyes. The problem is he is not entirely wrong about needing better planning. We are just in survival mode, and strategic planning feels like a luxury we cannot afford when we are dealing with acid rain and mutant animals and systems failing left and right. But to prove I am taking his concerns seriously, I set up a planning committee where Derek and Harrison and Sarah and I meet weekly to discuss long-term strategies. And surprisingly, once Derek feels like his input is valued, he stops trying to take over and actually contributes useful ideas. Month 10 brings the mega horde that Sarah's been warning about. She has been tracking animal movements on shore with the telescope and taking detailed notes. And one morning she makes me come look at something that has her genuinely terrified. There are thousands of them, she says, handing me the telescope. Every species we have observed, all gathering at the coast. And Silas, they are looking out at the ocean, at us. I look through the telescope and my blood runs cold because she is right. Lions, bears, gorillas, elephants, crocodiles, all gathered in massive groups at the shoreline. And they are all oriented toward the ocean, like they can sense we are out here. They cannot swim this far, I say, though I am not sure I believe it. Normal animals cannot, but these aren't normal. Sarah reminds me. The virus has enhanced their stamina, their strength, their intelligence. I don't think we should risk finding out how far they can swim. We increase our distance to 70 miles offshore just to be safe. And it costs us more fuel we cannot really afford. But watching those creatures gather at the coast has everyone spooked. Miguel's fishing gets even harder at this distance because the fish populations are different and techniques that worked at 50 miles don't work at 70, but he adapts because he is brilliant at what he does. And within 2 weeks, he has figured it out. Month 11 is when Derek actually proves himself, and I have to admit I was wrong about him being completely useless. We are 50 days into our 70-mile position and experiencing another bout of acid rain, when Derek notices something I missed. The hull plating we installed 9 months ago has corroded badly, and there is water seeping into the engine room. Silas, we have a serious problem, he says. And this time, there is no smugness, just genuine concern. The water's above the bilge pump level and rising. And if we don't fix this in the next few hours, we are going to have major flooding. I checked the engine room and he is right. Water's pooling faster than the pumps can handle because the hull breach is below the water line and the metal patching we did is failing. Jim and I try to repair it from inside. But we cannot get a good seal because of the water pressure, and Harrison suggests we need to beach the yacht on a shallow area to make proper repairs. But we are 70 miles from shore with no shallow water available. I have an idea, Derek says. It is risky, but it might work. We create a cofferdam temporary structure that blocks water flow to the breach area, pump that section dry, then make the repair. With what materials? I ask, because it is actually a good idea if we can pull it off. Tarps, wood from internal walls, sealant from the repair supplies. We improvise. He is already moving, pulling Rachel and Tyler and some of the others to help gather materials. And for the first time since we left shore, Derek's actually leading instead of just complaining. And I realize this is what he needed, a clear crisis where his skills actually matter. And he can contribute meaningfully. We spend 6 hours building the cofferdam and pumping water and making repairs. And Derek's directing the effort like he is back in a boardroom, except this time, the stakes are life and death instead of quarterly profits. The repair holds. The water stops rising. And when it is done, everyone's exhausted, but the yacht is safe. Derek collapses on the deck, breathing hard, and I sit down next to him. That was good work, I tell him. You saved us. He nods, still catching his breath. I know I have been an asshole. I know I tried to take over and I questioned your leadership and I have been a problem. But Silas, when there is something I can actually do to help, when there is a problem I know how to solve, that is when I am useful. I am not a survival expert or a military tactician or a marine engineer. I am a manager. I organize people and resources to solve problems. That is what I am good at. Then that is what you will do, I tell him. We need someone coordinating our resources and planning logistics and making sure everyone's working efficiently. That is your job now. Not captain, not decision maker, but chief operating officer or whatever you want to call it. I can do that. he says, and for the first time since we evacuated his family, I see genuine gratitude in his eyes instead of resentment. Thank you. Linda overhears this conversation, and she gives me a look that says she is proud of me for finding a way to work with her brother instead of just fighting with him. That night, she tells me privately, "You are a better man than Derek is. You had every reason to throw him overboard and you didn't. And now he is actually contributing instead of causing problems. That took character, or desperation, I say. We need everyone working together to survive this. And I cannot afford to waste his skills just because he is an asshole." Still, she says, kissing me, "Thank you for not giving up on my brother even though he gave you plenty of reasons to." Month 12 arrives, and we mark 1 year since the outbreak. And it is surreal to realize we have survived this long when so many people didn't. We gather in the salon for a sort of anniversary celebration, and Jim makes a toast with our recycled coffee. 1 year, 11 people, 1 yacht. We made it. To survival, Harrison adds. To family, Linda says, taking my hand. To the fortress, Sophie says, using her name for the yacht that everyone's adopted now instead of the original name. We drink our terrible coffee and eat a meal that is better than usual, because Miguel caught 2 massive tuna yesterday, and there is this moment of genuine happiness despite everything we have lost and everything we have survived. Emma asks the question we are all thinking. What do you think happens next year? Do we just keep doing this forever? For as long as we need to, I tell her. Until the mutants die out or the acid rain stops, or we find somewhere on land that is safe. But for now, this is home, and we are making it work. And that is enough. Derek surprises everyone by standing up to speak. "I want to apologize," he says, and everyone goes quiet. To Silas especially, but to everyone really. I spent the first 9 months of this apocalypse being angry that I wasn't in charge and questioning every decision and generally being a problem. And that was wrong. Silas saved my life and my family's life. And he has kept all of us alive through preparation and skill and determination. And I should have been supporting him instead of fighting him. So, I am sorry. And I promise to do better going forward. Apology accepted, I tell him. And I mean it, because holding grudges during the apocalypse is a waste of energy we cannot afford. You have proven yourself this last month, and you are valuable to this community. And that is what matters going forward. Rachel stands too. I owe everyone an apology as well. I have been supporting Derek's attempts to undermine you when I should have recognized that hierarchy and clear leadership is what keeps people alive in crisis situations. I am a lawyer, or I was, and I should have known better than to introduce chaos into a functioning system. Also accepted, I say, though I am still not sure I fully trust either of them. We all make mistakes. What matters is learning from them. The rest of the evening is actually pleasant, and I find myself thinking about how strange it is that the apocalypse has forced us to form this weird little family of survivors who wouldn't have spent time together in the old world. Jim and Harrison tell Navy stories. Miguel teaches Sophie and Tyler some Spanish fishing terms they both butcher adorably. Sarah discusses her latest observations about changing ocean chemistry, and Emma plays cards with the adults like she is one of us now instead of a kid. That night, Linda and I are on deck together looking at the stars. They are so much brighter now, without city light pollution, and you can see the Milky Way clearly, which is beautiful in a way that makes the apocalypse almost worth it. "Do you think we will ever go back to land?" she asks. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe someday when the mutants die out and the acid rain lessens and it is safe again. But that could be years or decades. And by then Sophie and Emma will be grown, and the yacht will be the only home they really remember. That makes me sad. Linda admits, this yacht, this life, it is survival, but it is not living. The girls deserve better than spending their whole childhood on a boat. They deserve to be alive. I counter, and right now, that means the boat. But I promise you, Linda, if there is ever a way to give them a normal life on land, I will take it. Until then, we adapt and survive, and make the best of what we have. 5 more years pass, and the epilogue of our story is both hopeful and bittersweet, in ways I didn't expect. The yacht has been rebuilt and repaired so many times that almost nothing original remains except the hull, and we have become experts at scavenging materials from coastal areas during brief expeditions when the mutant animals are elsewhere. Derek's found his role as our operations manager, and he is actually good at it, coordinating resources and planning logistics in ways that make our community more efficient. Emma's 21 now, and she has become our primary navigator and fisherman, working with Miguel to feed everyone. Sophie's 17, and she is my second in command on all technical repairs, learning engineering faster than I ever learned it. The mutant animals are dying, Sarah discovered, because the same virus that enhanced them is now killing them through some kind of secondary mutation that we don't fully understand but are grateful for. The shore is starting to be habitable again, though we are cautious, and we send scouting parties before committing to anything permanent. The acid rain is less frequent now, once a month instead of every 3 days, and the pH is closer to 4 than 2, which while still acidic is manageable with proper precautions. We make radio contact with other survivor groups, 3 other yachts scattered across the Pacific, 2 island communities that managed to stay isolated enough to avoid the worst of the outbreak, and a floating platform settlement that has built an entire community on salvaged oil rig equipment. There is talk of rebuilding, of finding ways to reclaim the land, of starting to think about long-term survival instead of day-to-day crisis management. Sophie asks me one morning while we are working on the solar panels, "Dad, if land becomes safe again, would we leave the yacht?" I think about it for a long time before answering. The yacht is home now, I tell her. We have spent 5 years making this work, building this community, surviving together. But if land is safe, and we can help rebuild civilization, yeah, I think we would. Though we'd keep the yacht as a backup always because preparation saved us once, and might save us again. I don't remember much about before, she admits. Just fragments. Our old house, my school, friends whose names I have forgotten. This is the life I know now. That is okay, I tell her. You adapted better than any of us, and that adaptability is what is going to help you survive whatever comes next, whether it is more years on the ocean or rebuilding on land, or something we haven't imagined yet. The final entry in my captain's log reads, Day 1825, 5 years, since outbreak population. 11. Yacht condition, maintained through constant repair and adaptation. Status, surviving and preparing to explore the possibility of land reclamation. We have proven that preparation and cooperation and sheer stubbornness can keep people alive even in the worst circumstances. The floating fortress endures. Number, a note from the author. Look, I am going to be real with you for a second here, because I have spent the last however many hours writing this story, and I have got some thoughts I need to share while they are still fresh in my mind. First off, this story exhausted me emotionally in ways I didn't expect when I started writing it. Creating Silas and his family, putting them through hell for 12 months, watching them adapt and survive, and sometimes fail, it is draining. You start caring about these characters even though you are the one putting them through the ringer. And there were moments writing the section about Emma risking her life to check on her friend where I genuinely felt sick to my stomach because I was imagining my own kids in that situation. The thing about post-apocalyptic survival stories is that they force us to think about uncomfortable questions. What would you really do if the world ended? Would you be the person who prepared like Silas? or the person who mocked him until it was too late? Would you risk your life to save strangers? Or would you prioritize your family above all else? And most uncomfortably, would you be Derek trying to take control even when you are not qualified? Or would you be Jim supporting the person who is actually keeping everyone alive? I made a deliberate choice to make the survival realistic and detailed, rather than glossing over the logistics, because I think that is what makes survival stories work, not the big dramatic moments of fighting zombies or mutant animals, but the small moments of fixing a corroded fuel line or rationing food, or dealing with acid rain. Real survival is boring and repetitive and requires constant vigilance. And I wanted to capture that, even though it meant slowing down the pace. The family dynamics were probably the hardest part to write because I wanted to show realistic tensions without making anyone purely villainous. Derek's not evil, he is insecure and needs validation, and genuinely thinks his management experience qualifies him to lead even though he is wrong. Linda's not weak for initially doubting Silas, she is rational for questioning what looked like paranoid delusion, until it turned out to be justified preparation. Emma's not stupid for wanting to check on her friends, she is compassionate and grieving, and trying to hold on to her old life. Here is what I am curious about, and I genuinely want to hear from you in the comments. Would you have prepared like Silas did if you got warning 3 months in advance? Because that is a real question, right? If you had credible information that society was about to collapse, would you spend your life savings on preparation, even though everyone would think you were crazy? Would your spouse believe you or leave you? Would you warn others or keep quiet to protect your source? And the bigger question, if you were on that yacht, would you be the person arguing for rescue missions like Emma? Or the person arguing for caution like Silas? Is there a moral obligation to help other survivors even when it risks your own community? Or is survival purely about protecting your own? I honestly don't know the right answer. And I deliberately didn't make Silas purely right or wrong about this, because I think it is genuinely complicated. The acid rain was a late addition to the outline, but it ended up being one of my favorite elements because it is the kind of realistic environmental consequence that zombie stories usually ignore. Nuclear plants melting down, chemical factories exploding, massive fires burning unchecked, all of that would absolutely affect the atmosphere in catastrophic ways. I spent way too much time researching acid rain effects on metal and skin tissue to make sure those details were accurate. And if you are wondering whether pH2 rain would really corrode metal that fast, yes, it would. It is horrifying. One thing I am genuinely proud of in this story is that I didn't make the yacht some magical perfect solution. It is falling apart constantly, requires endless maintenance, and Silas is barely keeping it together through improvisation and luck. That feels more realistic than the usual prepper fantasy where preparation means you are totally safe and everything works perfectly. Preparation helps enormously, but it doesn't eliminate all problems, it just gives you a chance to solve them. The mutant animals were fun to write because they are horrifying in different ways than zombies. Zombies are mindless and predictable. You know they will chase you. You know they will bite. You know how they behave. Mutant lions hunting in coordinated packs. Gorillas using tools. Crocodiles developing enhanced swimming capabilities. Those are smart predators that adapt and learn. And that is so much scarier because you cannot rely on predictable behavior patterns. I wrote Jim as the comic relief character partly because I needed someone to break tension with humor, but also because I think people like Jim actually exist, gruff old military guys who have seen enough that nothing phases them, and who crack jokes while dealing with terrifying situations. Because humor is a coping mechanism. His line about Derek being a piece of shit makes me laugh every time I read it because it is so perfectly timed and so perfectly in character. Here is what I want you to think about after reading this. The story ends on a hopeful note, with the possibility of returning to land. But would you actually want to leave the yacht after 5 years of making it work? You have built this entire community, adapted to this lifestyle, proven you can survive anything as long as you have got the floating fortress. Do you really want to risk that by going back to land where there are unknowns and new dangers? Or do you stay on the ocean where you know the rules and you have mastered survival? I am genuinely curious what you would choose, so drop a comment and let me know. Would you go back to land, or would you stay on the yacht? Would you have prepared like Silas if you had known what was coming? What would you have done differently? And if you made it this far through the story, seriously, thank you for sticking with it, because this ended up being way longer than I planned. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more long-form survival narratives, where I obsess over realistic details and character dynamics, hit that like button and consider subscribing, because your support literally makes it possible for me to spend entire days writing these stories instead of doing something more practical with my life. Comments and feedback are hugely appreciated because they help me understand what is working and what isn't. And honestly, I just like having conversations about these hypothetical scenarios. Until next time, stay prepared, stay adaptable, and remember that survival is less about having all the answers and more about being willing to figure things out as you go. Thanks for reading. Seriously, it means everything.